Oh, it's Baby Yoda. Oh, I can't hear you. Is that
Oh,
my
there we go.
fault or your
There
fault?
we go.
There we go.
I was muted.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I'm doing the big gaming headset,
Nice. You're one
so
of
I look
those.
extra fly, right? um, what's up, man? This is the first time we're doing this on like Zoom.
Yeah, it's just as awkward as every time. We're gonna start off just as awkward as every single podcast we
Oh,
do.
definitely. No, no, no. We're seasoned podcasters now. We've um we've done many a video. We can we could tackle this uh nice and no, it's already falling apart. Anyways, um I'm sure you have a bunch of topics. You always are writing different ideas and stuff. I have a few topics, and I had a little game we could play at one point.
Let's see. I have all these. See, I have all this stuff on my phone, but like I don't
Yeah,
know. I've talked about a lot on my Instagram as well. But
yeah. God, shut up.
do you want to go first or should I go first?
We'll go back and forth. You can start in classic easy XP fashion.
Oh yeah, welcome to the Easy XP podcast. My name is
Yeah, I
Curt.
guess
This
this
is
would
Zach.
be an easy XP podcast. We got too many different subsidiaries we could put things in.
We do. We have a lot.
Yeah. Anyways.
Um, the one I was gonna that I haven't talked about on my Instagram yet is it's kind of like the stories that you hold. Like there's I don't know if I brought this up with you, but like it's like my mom will hold certain stories that she'll recognize certain stories. Like for her, it's the ones that are like some obscure, like not disease, but something like one time I was like I told her I take a shower and I brush my teeth at the same time. Like I brush my teeth in the shower. And she's like, "Oh, but
Yeah.
Curt, like I heard that if the I don't know, the bacteria from the toothbrush and the
Yeah.
something like some obscure it's like that's why she likes House or she liked House before,
Hmm.
like some obscure type of story that like so that she can tell me like, oh no, Curt, those things happen, I'm like, yeah, but the only reason you heard about it on the news is
Yeah.
because those things don't happen.
It's funny because you see a lot of those kind of like narratives with things being set within society and then they're disproven later, but people still hold on to that idea. For instance, like vaccines cause autism. That's an extreme one, like
Yeah.
people still hold on to that even though that's been disproven like crazy.
Yeah.
Um,
And then who is I thinking? Oh, yeah, and then Salil. Salil is one of those like he loves talking about rich people, like that story about like, oh yeah, he's just loaded. Like those stories stick with him. Like, yeah, like
yeah.
his parents like have some, the immigrant Chinese parents have all this money so they crash their car and then they got a new Porsche after they crashed their first Porsche, like something like those stories he holds on
Yeah, yeah,
to.
yeah, yeah.
Or like
The
what was it?
like anecdotal, like
Yeah, I mean
heard
it's
from a friend through a friend kind of story, maybe.
yeah, well, I mean, even if it's anecdotal or not, it
Yeah, yeah,
just kind of speaks to like your values and like the stuff that you care about and how you see the world. It's kind of
true.
like, with Brat, some of the stuff that he talks about too. Like when I remember in one what we were talking about in the group chat, and he was kind of like, "Oh yeah, money talks," or something like that. And you're like, "Yeah." I mean, like on some level, like they're not all like wrong. Like none of these perspectives are wrong,
No, not
but they are
necessarily.
very telling of like how you see the world and your values and stuff like that. And I think it's interesting to think about like, okay, for you, if you can think of like even me, I have to think really hard at myself. Like what
Hmm.
stories do I hold and enjoy? Like, for example, I know one typical story that I enjoy is the people that like, yeah, like they just do their own thing and then they made a channel and then they like, like Game Grumps
Yeah.
or like Mega
Sorry, I'm like,
64 type of stuff. Like they just were themselves and then they made it like, that's a story that I like to tell a lot of because that's what
yeah.
I
I
like
think
to
you
do.
and I both like hold that kind of like independent people kind of stay true to themselves, like or just like did a project with friends that just turned into something they didn't even
Mhm.
expect.
Yeah.
And like they still kind of call the shots for themselves, but like they have like an indie kind of following,
Yeah.
but it's
Yeah.
still like it's impactful. I don't know. I
But
think
I
it's just
think I
that.
think it's interesting, like even from
Yeah.
I'm trying to segue here too, but
No, totally.
just when you meet someone, what stories do they tell you kind of thing is like what stories
Mm,
do you hear the most often from this type of person?
yeah.
And that actually is very telling to like what kind of person like they are. Like what stories do you hold on to? What stories do you tell the most right? And I think that that speaks a
Yeah.
lot to like how you see the world and your values and stuff. And
Mm.
I just thought
And,
I was just
and
thinking
just
about
to
that.
like be clear for people watching this, like we're not shitting on like Brad or Salil. Like these are our friends. It's just like these are different examples of like where your mindset is at in terms of, I guess, like, I don't know, what you're driven for, or like what, I don't
Well,
know,
like I said, it's what you
impresses
value,
you,
but like
I
how
guess,
you when
or
you see
value.
something, like when you see something, like what do you see in that situation?
Mm-hmm.
You know, whereas some people do, they're just like, oh yeah, like I remember I was talking to one guy back at SFU and like I don't know, he was like a business whatever guy or something.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what we were talking about, but he equated everything down to like value. He's like, I'm like, yeah, I mean, like, I don't know, I just because I was trying to discuss with him kind of like, yeah, well, I mean, I think that like it's hard to put like a number or like a value on like just hanging out with friends or whatever. And like if I want to do that instead of like, you know, make money or stuff. He's like, well, yeah, I would just say that you value that more. And I'm like, yes, like in your world, the terms that you're using, like, yes, of
Mm-hmm.
course, right? It's kind of like,
Their kind of framework that
yeah, like that
they
that fits,
follow.
but it's just to
Yeah.
me, it doesn't mean the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't just
No.
say, oh, there's a value and this is more value than that, which like I totally understand. Like the logic there makes sense, but
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't use that wording because I don't see the world like just with values. Like this is this value, this is that value, right? And so that
Mm-hmm.
again, like that's guess that's kind of what was interesting to me when I was thinking about that. Of like, yeah, I mean, you can tell a lot by a person by like the stories they tell and the stories that they have. You hear the most of them.
Yeah. No, for sure. Um,
Your
sorry,
turn.
I had a thought and I completely lost it. Okay, well, I was like reading something on like Instagram the other week, and like, it was kind of like the quote was, these quotes are like, it's always like hokey to read these quotes, but then like some of them you're like, yeah, okay, that one actually, like, yeah, it's
Are
good
we
to
are we
like,
playing the game now? Zach has
not
this
yet.
game.
This would be a good way to segue into it, but like, it's a good way of like compartmentalizing that idea, of like success or motivation sometimes. So some of them are good. But one of the things I read was, if you give yourself 30 days to clean your room, then it'll take 30 days. If you give yourself three days to clean your house or your room, then it'll take you 3 days. Like, and it really made me think, because I was like, because I just released my comic and stuff on a website, but like I put that date on myself and like pulled an all-nighter just to make sure it all happened, and still there was like some flaws and stuff, but like me putting that like date over myself like really like made me do it. I was like, maybe that's true. Like maybe, you know, because like there's the aspect of like you have a big project, and like you need to understand, like, you know, I'm going to animation. Like they understand it may take 2 years to make this movie, right, or something.
Mhm.
But like you need to understand the time frame in general, but also um like putting a reasonable time, I guess, on a project. And like, what do you think of that? Like, is this mindset correct, or is it just like, should you just be able to like find that moment to do the thing? Like,
Well, I think everybody works from different motivations, but one
mm-hmm.
thing to consider obviously is first of all, everybody works different. I said that already, but
Yeah.
humans also function very well. Well, some don't, but like under
Mm-hmm.
pressures. And I think we were talking about this like
Yeah.
um, in university when we had like a 10, 12 page paper to write, and then you don't do it till the last couple days.
Yeah.
But for some reason during that time, sometimes you like for me, I would hit that. This is how I write papers, right? I have that eureka moment the
Yeah.
last day or the last 2 days, and I
Mm-hmm.
can just go. I can just write for like 12 pages. But I think the reason why that eureka moment comes is because I'm put under this pressure of the deadline.
Yeah.
And I think I've seen myself perform under certain types of pressure. Now,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, there's times where that doesn't always work and you like crumble or like it's too much stress.
Yeah.
But it's also like they say when your brain is under that type of stress and not dealing with it very well,
It's
it's
working like
marking
on the.
that for later so that when you
Yeah.
rest and whatever, next time you come back, you'll be able to perform better.
Yeah.
So that's something to consider in terms of like,
Like the learning aspect of it. Like.
yeah, well, that part, but also just humans being able to perform, I mean, any animal, like under specific pressures. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, when you're, I don't know if you, when you play sports or play video games, when you're under like severe pressure of like something, sometimes people just pull off some crazy move. You see it in sports all the time. You score that
Yeah.
three
Exactly.
pointer from fucking downtown in the last second of the game. And you would
Mhm.
argue that that pressure is what led to that amazing play, because so much is on the line that your brain turns on as like, okay, fucking
Yeah, it's like
laser,
go
like,
time.
yeah, exactly, right. So
Yeah.
there's that to consider, but
Mhm.
I also think, like, that conflicts, that sounds to on the surface conflict with, don't put too much pressure on yourself, don't stress yourself out in general, which is like a very Gary V thing to say, is, you have time and all that stuff, and
Yeah.
which is true, but I think he's trying to minimize, like, just everyday kind of general stress when you're not doing stuff. And that makes me also think about, stress and like pressure or like fear or whatever sometimes doesn't make you, it either makes you paralyzed sort of, or it makes you move. Like, some people move much, more effectively under stress, whereas
Yeah,
some people kind of
exactly.
freeze. Because there's times
That's
where,
the
like, I've
thing.
been in like an exam, sorry, I've
No,
been
that's
like
a
in an
Fisher thought.
exam,
Sorry.
and then there's only so much time left, and that freezes me, because I'm like, okay, I'm calculating how many marks I'm going to get if I just
It's
hand the
kind of like
test
a
in, and
fight or
then I'm trying to,
flight.
like, should I go back to this question and do that question, but then if
Yeah.
I try to go back to that question, but then it takes me too long, I'm like, I should just finish the question. So, like, I'm now, the pressure has, like, broken me.
Yeah,
there's,
exactly.
there's also those
It,
times as
it's
well.
it's funny, yeah, because sometimes it's kind of like a fight or flight almost. It's like, am I going to be able to pull this off under pressure? And that's like a learning moment because you don't always do it, and you kind of like, crap, I should have given myself more time.
Mhm.
But like, I'm seeing people, like, I have one of my teachers at school currently, and he talks about breaking down your week and like making sure, like, he's like, if it's due on Friday, you need to make sure like by Monday you're getting started. And I'm like, I I do not function that way. I'm
Mhm.
also in school and I have 5 other projects. I don't know what you expect from me, but I just, especially with school right now, it's just like, it's always like under pressure, and I've kind of learned to like live with that. But like, sometimes I can see it in my fellow students too. It's just like, we turn something in and you're like, I don't feel as good about this one. But then there's
Mhm.
other times you're like, I really nailed it. Like,
Mhm.
but yeah, like, so I don't know, like, because I was thinking, like, I think I might function kind of under that quote from the beginning, like, or like, I found more success with that now in terms of getting stuff done, because I've done more in these past like 3 months in terms of art than I have in
I
three
think if
years.
you want, like, a concrete, like,
Mm-hmm.
this is done by this date, then you obviously
Yeah,
have to set deadlines, like, at some point, sort of, like, because
yeah,
it's like,
yeah,
well, it has to be done.
yeah.
Um, because I think that, like, deadlines can be useful if you just want a thing to be finished,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, even if because sometimes you might have to sacrifice a bit of, like, time and quality of the thing because you just
Yeah,
need it done. But sometimes that's more important. Like, sometimes just having it done is, like,
yeah.
way more important than all the little meticulous edits and all the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that you're gonna do.
Because like,
Yeah.
no, sorry, there's just
And
like a point where I feel like you can fixate on something and then you take too long with it. Like, you end up kind of ruining the thing because you gave yourself too much
right,
time.
and that's where you should value, like, once it's past
Yeah.
that point, like we're saying, you should value just getting it out now it should be fully just deadline now. Like, if you could
Mm-hmm.
fiddle with it for another day and then just fucking put it out or something, right? So there's that.
Yeah,
um
that's true.
but on the other hand, like, I guess looking at my behavior and how I produce stuff, like, I have a different mindset for depending on the type of content I do. So, for example, the content that I do daily, like my workout videos or my like training videos or my
Mm-hmm.
talking to the camera videos, or whatever, the less edity videos,
Yeah, yeah,
I use the far end of the other spectrum of just like, I don't care, like, I'm just getting it out. But
yeah.
here,
That's
because
just.
my mindset isn't under pressure, it's
Mm-hmm.
more of like, it's like practicing like my jab on the bag or
Mm-hmm.
something. It's like, I'm just pouring in work. Like, it's just work. I'm not even thinking about, was this jab good? Was each jab I made
Yeah,
really
you're not
good or not?
meticulously breaking it down, really.
No,
Like,
I'm just like,
yeah,
here's another video, just another video, make another
yeah,
one, just make another
exactly.
one.
I
Right.
mean
But I
that.
don't know if I have pressure associated with that or not. Like, it's not really
Yeah.
stress. It's like, it's more routine. Like, I wake up
Mm-hmm.
in the morning and I'm in bed and I'm just like, okay, make a video. Like, there's no pressure. I mean, I guess
Yeah,
that, maybe there's a little bit of a pressure, but it's become a routine. And hopefully maybe that's what you're saying
exactly.
in school too, is like that pressure
Yes,
is part of it.
exactly. The pressure has been, yeah, like, combined with like the routine now. Like my routine is pressure. But like with you, I remember like when you went on Gary Vee and talked with him, you guys should go check out the video. I think I squeezed that in. No, after that, because he told he's like, you better make like, what is it, 3 TikToks a day, or don't even bother like coming to see me kind of thing, which was obviously jokes and stuff, but like I know for that first bit, like you kind of felt like a pressure, but like I've seen you get back into this swing of things because like you took a little bit of a break, not necessarily like a big break, but you're still doing a bit of stuff, but you know what I mean, like you weren't firing on all pistons like I see you're doing now. Like I see like I see like at least 3 pieces of content from you a day, I feel like, and it's all something different. It's like a Gundam kit, like TikTok or something, or a reel, and then I'll see you doing like like breaking down kind of like fight techniques and stuff, and then I see you doing like, you know, you're podcasting like Advanced City Fight Tech, and us are doing our stuff when we can. So no, I think like I see you back in that swing and that routine, but it's interesting to hear the pressure aspect for you.
Like it's weird because now I don't feel as pressured in like, I don't know, like I don't feel as pressured or stressed or whatever. I'm just doing it. I think like I had one realization, but I don't, for some reason this doesn't feel like the main realization that sparked this. But I was thinking about, you know, I always talk about like how much I should work to put more time in and like living more humbly and all that stuff, which I already live pretty humbly, I think. And then but I was also thinking like, you know, whether I work more or less or not, like either way, it's still gonna be more work. Like, you know, I work less, I still have to do more work, right? If I work, I still have to do more work. Like it should be, the answer should be just more work if I want some of this stuff to happen or whatever to happen. Or that's what would happen. Like even if I do it slowly, the accumulation will be more work. And like, you know what I mean? Like there's a set, this is what we talked about with GMV and stuff all the time, is like there's a certain amount of work that needs to get done at some point, you know, like it's like you have to, if I'm practicing my jab to get a good jab, I need to hit the bag X amount of times before I at least have a decent jab. Obviously that number is different for everybody, but you need to have an accumulation of work anyway. And so I'm like, I know like maybe when work is too stressful and it's reducing the amount of videos I can make, then it's worth considering more. But I don't know, for some reason I think that was part of the realization. I was like, well, you just have to do more anyway, whether you work less or not, you have to do more. And then, and the other one that I was talking about, which was a good segue into the next thing that I was going to bring up with you. Remember I brought up funnels at work, like the funnel.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting like way of, I guess, phrasing it. This concept. So
it's just like, like I mean, I have all the things that I like, right? So I have Gundams and anime and video games and training and life talks and all the, and then the stuff that we do, art talks, and then I'm trying to look at fiction writing and all this stuff. So there's all these little
you've been delving into that. Sorry, go on.
But there's, from all the stuff that I put out, and again, this is because I have put out so much stuff that I just get to see what people like or whatever. Like the most value that I can see myself bringing immediately is through training and life talks. Like that's where I get the most feedback, where they're like, yeah, I really needed that, or like, thank you for that, or they're really like attached to like that type of content that I put out.
Yeah.
And so it's not that I wouldn't be able to, you know, give people value with the other types of content. It's just that might take a little bit longer for me, or it doesn't come as fast, or maybe my audience that happens to be watching right now isn't as interested in anime or something like that. Right. So if I think it's worth acknowledging, you know, for example, like, you know, you should be on all the platforms, but I acknowledge my Instagram and TikTok are the strongest right now. Right. And
those are the ones I vibe with the most, I feel like.
Yeah. And then it's in the same way that training and life talks are the 2 buckets of things that I like, that I find the most like I'm bringing the most value. I can just tell, like people are like, like they're finding that content the most valuable. Whereas like some people might find the anime stuff valuable, but it's not as like, I'm not getting as much response from them, which is not a problem. I'm still going to make that stuff or whatever. But I have a good priority list right now of like, you know, I'm going to try to bring as much value with the life talks and the training as I possibly can. And then the other stuff will come later. And I think we talked about this, like everybody has their thing that breaks them out or whatever. But it obviously that thing is most likely to be the thing that brings the most value, and that'll be why it broke out, is because that thing
Yeah.
brought the most
Something
value to the most
people
people.
can connect with. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think about, like, if you're trying to, it's because the other thing was I was watching a clip of Gary Vee again or whatever, and they're asking him about, like, the type of content they should produce, and then they asked the question, like, he has one clip about blueberries where he's making fun
Oh
of
yeah,
lunch
yeah.
breaks, whatever, and then
I
they're
remember
like,
that
well, do
that
you
video.
do you like start with blueberry? The question was like, do you start with blueberries, or you want to start more on your topic? And he's like, well, you got to talk about your topic, because it's a direct funnel to your sales, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to start with that. But blueberries you can do later once you're more established, which those are two extremes,
It's a weird way of putting
right?
it, but I
Right. I
like
know.
it.
But for me, it's like, it's not as extreme, but it's similar. It's like, my topic that people that are responding the most to and finding the most value out of is the life talks and the training. And then the anime and the whatever, the Gundams and the gaming
Yeah.
is also there and interesting, but I'm going to focus very much on this first. Like, this is the thing I'm going to try to at least have a video as much as I can about this stuff. But I'm
Yeah.
not, obviously, if I want to make the other stuff, I'll make it anyway. But
Yeah.
just knowing that this is where a lot of the value I can bring can come from. And so,
Mm-hmm.
like, when you're thinking about, like, let's say your comic, this is something I was going to talk to you personally anyway, is that the goal for me, might be to make all the content that I want. It doesn't matter, anime,
Yeah.
games, whatever. But right now, in the place that I'm at, like, I have to know that training and life talks are the thing that's going to bring the most value and it's going to attract the most people that might be able to support the rest of it later. And so with your comic,
Mm-hmm.
thinking of a way to, because first, I'm sure everybody's thinking about that, right? Like, if they have
Yeah.
a comic or a channel or something like that, they're like, how do I get more people to, like, pay attention and, like, look at my stuff and
Mm-hmm.
whatever.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you can think of the thing, or if or if you've tested and tried a bunch of content or whatever, that of the part that you can bring the most value in
Mm-hmm.
first, and then the rest of the stuff will come if you can just keep punching that part where you're bringing value, like whatever it could be. You can make it as associated with your comic as you want or not. I mean, it'd be nice if it was. I don't know.
Yeah. I
You know.
mean, for me, I need to up my game in terms of like doing kind of more general content. Like I think the things I'm learning in my school, I'm like, why don't I just make small like TikTok videos and like teach that? Like, I mean, this isn't like
Yes.
information that's behind a door, like lock and key. I should be out there. And I'm like, it's a good way for me to kind of like make myself kind of remember all these concepts and make sure I really understand them. If I can explain them, then I should be able to hopefully understand them and apply them, ideally. But yeah, I think like I see that aspect with how you're putting out stuff, and I see how it's beneficial, and like it like you breaking down a punch, for instance, like people who are into MMA or just training in general, or whatever type of fighting style they're doing. Like, it's good to like be able to see like it broken down and being like, okay, like I'm actually, when I punch, I'm doing this wrong. I don't know. Like, I don't know enough to break it down for you here, but like, so like that's something that brings value to them. And like we've talked about this many times, like you have that content that's bringing them value, and then they maybe start to get interested in you, and they're like checking out your other stuff, and then they find out, oh, this guy actually is into, like, for instance, like you're talking about fantasy writing or something, right?
Hmm.
It's like, oh, he actually has a blog where he puts out like, a chapter a week or whatever it is,
Yeah.
that's a lot of writing, but and then they start to delve into it, and they're like, I wouldn't have expected this from this person, and then they become kind of like part of the cult, a little bit.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean,
they
it's
start
that
to.
transition we used to talk about when we were starting out,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, years ago, is
Exactly.
from, like, purely, like, anybody who's watching your content
Mm-hmm.
is probably, if they don't know you, they need the value. It's about the content. It's almost like sales. Like, they need the value of the video. Like, how
Yeah.
long is your video? How quickly can I get to the value, which could be anything from, like, fixing my computer to, like, making me laugh or whatever. Like, how fast in those, either it's a TikTok in the first few seconds or a YouTube video in the first minute or whatever, like, can you get to, like, the value? Because I don't know you, I'm not invested in you, I don't give a shit, right?
Exactly.
And then there's that transition. That's one end, all the way to the other end of, they've watched enough of your videos. Let's say you're the guy that fixed my computer 10 times with 10 of your videos. to the point where I'm like, I'm subscribed now because I feel like maybe I would learn more about computers and I wouldn't get into these problems anymore. And then now I'm invested in this guy. And then to the far end where he has vlogs that I just want to watch because he's a cool guy and whatever, right? Which is, you
Yeah,
see,
exactly.
that's where a lot of YouTubers make that transition where there's, you know, there's a very common one where like travel ones where they're like, okay, what to do, 10 things you should know before you move to Japan or something. And then
Yeah, exactly.
you know, how to, you know, all these tips and tricks, top 10, whatever, this and stuff.
And then
That's
suddenly
like,
you're watching their personal vlog just about their life and you're
exactly.
invested,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, like,
But it started with like the value of like, I
tip,
already,
yeah.
you know, like, yeah, like everybody knows that a top 10 list is valuable. Like just for just the format itself, even if it's not a valuable top 10 list, it feels like a valuable top 10. Like just top 10s are valuable. Reviews are valuable. It's like if you just reviewed literally everything in your life, you're probably bringing value. Right. So that's like a good approach.
I don't know if a top 10 list is valuable, but I know they're entertaining.
Yeah, well, I mean, valuable in the entertaining sense, right? Just what this guy, even if they're all wrong, it's just to see what this guy picked, and it's entertaining.
Honestly, if they were all wrong, you know, they would probably get more people watching.
Exactly, you'd be like, well, look at this idiot.
Wait, this guy doesn't think Evangelion's the best anime ever? Like, fuck off.
Oh.
What? This guy thinks that Avatar: Last Airbender is the best anime.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Oh, I'm like out of focus here. Okay, there we go. All right, we can go on to my game.
Okay.
And so I don't know what to call this segment, but maybe does it motivate you? Well, I guess I don't know. You think I'd have this open on Instagram already?
That's a good title for the game, I think.
Does it motivate you?
Because I think that's the question. That's the question of the game. So Zach has these quotes that he's found, I think, is the game, and then he's just gonna ask me what I think of them.
Yes. I have like a few things I follow, but I'm just gonna literally type in a motivational quotes. I'll find the first Instagram I can find, and let's see if you guys, well, I guess Curt and you people at home, if you think it's motivational, let us know in the comments. All right, let's see. Motivational. Here we go. And of course, they gotta have the stupid picture, you know, like the generic.
Hey, don't make fun of them. They're trying. If you give up, I was reading.
We'll see. We'll see if they're trying.
Okay.
Just kidding. Okay, let's find a good one. One bad chapter doesn't mean your story is over.
That's
I mean, that kind of goes without saying. I would say that's pretty accurate. Okay.
Ding.
this one's just literally finish what you started.
Sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, this particular, I need to find that account I think that I follow, because some of them I was like, I don't know. Some of these I'm not so sure about. You think I'd prepare this better. What you give power to has power over you.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah, I suppose.
I mean,
it's a very vague thing to say, but this is why. Okay, this is why, like, when I make my posts on Instagram or TikTok, it's like preferably you would read the paragraphs that I write underneath it so that you understand the context, because the thing by itself sometimes is like, but also you could mean something totally different.
You need a catchy little thing they can glom onto, like an elevator pitch almost, and then they read the actual context and content behind it.
I mean, but yeah, I get that. I mean, that reminds me of like what I was saying about like attaching your self-worth to like certain successes and achievements is like, you know, if I give power to the idea of me being like a pro fighter or something like that, then that'll hang over me now. Because if I'm not, every day that I feel like I'm not a pro fighter, I'm going to feel insecure or something like that. So like if I give power to the idea of that thing, me being a business owner or something, like every day I'm not that thing, it's going to have power over me. It's going to kill me. Like I'm going to be like, I'm not a business owner. Oh my God. Am I a business owner? I have to check every time. Like I'm just, okay. I'm, you know, like, just, you know, so that's what I think of when I hear that quote.
Yeah. That's a good way of putting it. Am I a business owner? No. Okay. Here's the next one. Life is not about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
I mean, maybe you should do both.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, it's so vague. I mean, like, I understand. I think I get what they're saying is like you get to choose. It's more of like you get to choose rather than like aimlessly like, oh, who am I, as a like, that versus like I get to make myself like this is what I want to be.
I think these are like one and the same personally. I think through creating yourself, you're finding yourself.
Yeah, Yeah.
I don't know. It
It's
kind of
just
seems
some, but you know
arbitrary.
what? Sometimes it is that thing though, right? Like you say
Okay.
it like slightly differently,
Yeah.
and then like that happens all the time, like where someone
Yeah.
will say something that you've heard before, and then you hear it that one time, and I'm like, yeah, like that thing,
Yeah.
like I like if you
What's
know
the
when I've
last
heard it.
time you've had that happen to you? Because I can remember one recently where someone's like, when you're depressed, it's because you're dwelling on the past, and when you're
I said that. That
anxious,
was me. I said that.
was that you?
That was me.
Okay.
I said that.
Well, that's
Depression
definitely
is
Curt.
dwelling on the past, and anxiety is dwelling on the future.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that quote because that actually did blow my mind. Because I was like, wow, that
Yeah, because when
actually
you
is
first read
accurate.
it, you're like, no, it's
I'm
no,
like,
you're
no,
right.
it's not. I'm
Yeah, you're
anxious about the
right. Yeah.
past. Wait, no, wait.
Yeah, like no, that
Yeah.
makes sense. Kind of like I
Yeah.
mean, obviously, again, generalizing, you can be depressed about the future and you can be anxious about the past, I'm sure, but like just generally speaking, it makes sense.
Yeah, I agree. All right, here's the next one. Yeah, nothing more I can say on that. Oops. What just happened? Sorry, I accidentally clicked something wrong. Well, let's go back. Okay, here we go. Notice the people who make an effort to stay in your life. Okay, that one's pretty self-explanatory, I would assume.
Yeah, but I also see like so okay, I have a thing about that is like there's people, you know, that I've been friends with or we're friends with, and then they take, you know, me not hanging out with them very personally. But I
Okay,
think
yeah.
as you get
Actually, in that regard,
older,
you're right.
right? Like as you get
Yep.
older, the way I look at it is we kind of have to like share like okay, before it's like we had school. We share school
Mm-hmm.
together. Like you didn't realize it, but we all go to school together and we walk home and eat lunch together because it's fucking school. We're on the same schedule, whatever. Once you get older and you're not in school anymore, I need to if there's nothing that I share with you, I'm not gonna like, especially if what the thing you want me to share with you, I don't want to do, like go drinking and go to the club. Like if I don't want to do those things, like I
Yeah.
don't have a thing to share with you anymore. Therefore, it makes it very difficult for me. But even if that's the case, that doesn't mean I don't care. There's lots of
Mm-hmm.
friends that I don't hang out with or I haven't seen in a long time that I still love and care. Like it's a
That's true.
feeling that I have inside. Like you don't know what I'm feeling and what I think in my head. Like you don't know. Like I do feel
Mm-hmm.
those things, but I
Even
just
if you know
don't wanna
someone, you don't
go,
know what's going on in their head necessarily. Like,
yeah, but I don't want to go play fucking
you
bowl. I
only
don't
have
want
so
to go
much
bowling
time
with
in your
you.
life.
Yeah, like I don't want to do
And
these things so like we don't
yeah,
share a thing so I don't
I
see you.
believe
But that doesn't mean I don't
um
like love you or like would care
exactly.
for
Yeah,
you and stuff like that, right? So
I
that
believe
there's that.
in the pod. Like you can love from afar. You know, even when you're not talking to someone, like you see them doing well. Like on, especially with social media nowadays, like some you can see people like you were friends with that you just don't have the
Well,
time to reach out to or the
I guess
motivation necessarily. But you can be, you know, respectful and like notice that person. Like you can be like, oh, okay, they're doing what they like, you know, or like I
yeah.
respect that. I don't feel like reaching out necessarily at the moment, maybe some point in the future, but like
Mhm.
I notice that you're doing what you like and I respect that, you know.
And I mean that goes to like I'm you know tying it into like the branding and all that stuff, like making content and all that, is that there's so many people I know that like watch content and like maybe mine or maybe someone else's, like you and I watch content that like I'm not gonna leave a message or like I don't even
Mm-hmm.
like all the stuff but like
Yeah.
I'm referencing so much of the stuff because it hit me so hard and I care so much about it, but like they might not even know. And that's part of the
Agreed.
reason why
Yeah.
like I put content out too. And I see someone message me out of nowhere and be like, yeah, man, like I really, that thing you said the other day really hit me. And it's like, wow, that was you this whole time you've been paying attention, but you
I
did
have that too, actually.
not that you need
Yeah.
to like, not that you need to or
Yeah.
whatever, but like it's there. And that's what I think about, like it just that emotion, that feeling or whatever, your opinion is
Mm-hmm.
like inside of you. So it's like, there's no way, like I can tell you and all that stuff, but like you don't have to make time, I guess is what I'm trying to say,
Yes.
to like
Yeah.
care. Like I can still show that I care and love with you, or like I can still have those feelings,
Mm-hmm.
whether you take it because you know, like your friends are like, well, if you don't come and do my favorite thing with me, then it
Mm-hmm.
means you don't love me. And it's like, no, I love you in the way I think I do. But just because I don't want to go fucking jet skiing with you because I don't want to do it. Like, you know what I mean? Or just because I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to go like show up to your party or whatever. It's like I still love you, but that,
Yeah, that
you
doesn't
know,
mean
like
I'm not your friend anymore. Like,
exactly, right? So
yeah.
that's what I think when you say that quote.
Or it's like a lot of those people are like, you didn't come to my birthday. It's
Yeah.
like, you know, like wasn't feeling up to it.
Maybe
that
I
night,
didn't
or I
want
was
to
busy,
spend
like-
$200 at the
Yeah,
dinner table.
exactly. Like, Okay, so I'm gonna say it does not motivate me. This quote.
Okay.
I feel like at the end of the quote we should be like, yeah, okay, this one's lame. Here we go. Tough times don't last. Tough people do.
I mean, okay, sure.
I like.
I mean, yeah.
Pretty motivated.
I'm not motivated, but like
Let's give it like a
I agree with the
middle
quote.
ground.
I agree with the
Yeah.
quote, I guess.
Okay, we should have like a
know.
scale. So this is like, isn't it a motivating quote? This is like, I agree with it, but it's not motivating me. And this is, I can argue this one. Like,
I mean, I could see it motivating people, obviously.
but okay, but well, that's what the comments are for, people. So you tell us if that motivated you. But it doesn't sound like it motivated you, and it doesn't personally.
Well, no, I mean, like
me.
I think it is like a good motivator for the people that it works for. Like it makes sense, right? And it's like,
I mean, that's like all these.
Like this UFC fighter that was talking about training, and like one thing that he always thinks about when they're like, push yourself when training, like put yourself like doing all the sprints or like whatever it is you're doing for training, for example, it's like, this is only temporary. Like it's like, when you're doing like a wall sit or like an arm hang or like what do you call the what's the ab one? I forgot what it's called again. When you're on, you're like this on the floor. I forgot what it's called now.
A plank.
A plank, yeah. Like
okay, I did plank, that today. I was like,
yeah. It's like a time thing.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like the
longest minute of your life.
Yeah, like this is not gonna last though. Like this is like there will be a time where this will be over.
Yeah.
Right. And so like that's kind of what the quote is trying to say, right? It's like it's not that like if you can weather it, like there'll be a time where, and that's why, with the neuroscientist guy, Andrew Huberman, if you guys want to check him out, you should check out Andrew Huberman. He puts a lot of neuroscience.
Old Andy Hugh.
Yeah, he puts a lot of neuroscience into like layman's terms for us to understand. But he's talking about like Navy SEALs or like whatever people that they're trying to get into the military or like a high caliber military class, and they don't like select you through like first, just when you're first trying to get in, they don't like select you specially. It's just you have to pass these tests. So for obviously like swim in cold water or with carrying a weight or some shit, whatever, be in cold water and shit. So like it's not that they aren't selected or like they it's that they fail, which is it's a mental thing, because obviously assumedly if you're applying for this trying to be in the military, I'm assuming you're probably somewhat in shape, you're probably pretty gritty and you work out really hard and whatever, assumedly,
and you need to have that mental capacity to push through.
Well, that's the thing, is the reason why they don't get in is because they chose to quit during some of these exercises or tests, and that's the mental thing that we're talking about, is like, tough times don't last, tough people do, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
It's like they're choosing to, like, if you're in cold water for too long, they're choosing to quit, right? Which is, everybody has that, when I'm trying to do my cold showers, sometimes you're just like, I don't want to do it. Sometimes you're just like, you try to get in, you're like, it's too cold, I'm not doing it.
Yeah.
But that's what that quote is trying to say. It's like, it is up to you. It's your mental thing. It's like your mental
capacity to push through.
Yeah. Cause these tough times won't last. Like they won't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like there will be a time where they'll be over. So that's up to you.
Yeah.
Like whether you
want COVID, like, that's lasting forever.
Yeah. Yeah, right. It'll last till the day we die. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
It'll be over. So that's what I think about too.
Knock on wood, man. I don't want that. I'm just kidding.
I don't know. People are, I mean, if you're like in positions that we're in, it's like you're fucking stop complaining. But
yeah, exactly.
Because there's people that are like really suffering, and it's like
totally
stop.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Move on? I know this next one, I think will get some debate. So success is the best revenge. The age-old quote.
I mean,
today is sponsored by Sapporo for this one.
I mean, I'm trying to, like, if you want to take the good out of that one, it's the chip on the shoulder. It's like the conviction, right?
Okay, yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I agree.
Right there, like there's that I don't know, like it seems like a World Star clip, right? But you'd see it on Instagram where there's two like teens playing high school basketball, and that one kid's like all in his face, like making fun of him, like, what, bitch, like whatever, and then the other kid just doesn't say anything, and then
he just like gets it in.
Yeah, he schools him like through the whole game.
Yeah,
but they show the other kid also trying to like get in his face still, but the other kid just schools him, and he like breaks his ankles and stuff. And so, like, yeah, I mean, like, I understand what they're trying to say there, and then but also like, the adversity of something terrible happening to you and whatever. And that's a mindset thing in terms of like, okay, is this terrible thing that's happened to you, is this going to break you? And this is going to be the reason why you don't succeed? Or is this going to be the reason why you do succeed? And that's a mindset thing, right? It's like, I'm
Yeah.
going to succeed in spite of this, because of this. Like this made me whatever, strong or hard or mentally, whatever. Like I have more grit than you because of this thing. And
There is
therefore,
that like kind of redeeming quality in that regard. Like
somewhat,
having
yeah.
like it's like Naruto. He has a chip on, like, well, no, maybe. I mean, in a way, he's like always motivated, but he's got that chip on his shoulder a bit, and you're like, okay, I kind of like.
Yeah, because
He wants
everybody,
revenge against people for not like, in a way, like believing in him and stuff.
yeah, I can see
At the
that.
beginning, as it goes, it changes.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, but I don't, but the negative way to look at that is like you're doing it in spite of,
I just think revenge shouldn't be the motivator.
kind of like the spite part is the part
Yeah.
that you have to be careful about. Is like, I had this
poisonous.
fantasy as a kid too of like, my dad wanted me to be some like lawyer, engineer, whatever type of guy. And it's like, I had this I would never do it, but I had this fantasy of like, yeah, I'll be an engineer and I'll fucking show him and I'll do all the things. And then I'll be like, look, dad, I'm not even fucking happy. Ooh, oh.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'll be successful in the way that he wanted me to, but then I'll still prove to him
I'll
that
put
it
in
was
all this work to show him I'm not happy.
yeah, exactly. Right. But that's obviously, that's
the
not
best way of putting it.
That's it. I would never.
I think people do that though. Honestly, like you look at people who
they do it, but I don't know if they did it with the intention of like, hey, look how unhappy I am because I followed you.
And I guess later in life they were like spiteful.
And that's where you'd have to be careful with that particular quote, I think.
Yeah, I think it's trash. So
Okay.
Yeah. No, but I get it. Like the conviction part. It's true. Like it's like that underdog story, Like
yeah,
we connect with that as a society. I mean, look at how many pieces of media have that story. Yeah, but I think it could be a very poisonous kind of mindset.
Cool. Yes.
All right. Let's see.
Actually, especially in like relationships too, right? That can get real toxic real fast.
No kidding. Then you're bringing up the past like all the time. Son of a bang, son of a boom, you did that at that party. No, anyways, here's the next one. Push yourself because no one else is going to do it for you. That's another like age-old one. These are kind of generic.
They are very generic.
I was hoping to get some like ones that I haven't heard my entire life.
I mean, what I think about that too is, I guess it's like, I think of Gary always saying like, whose permission are you looking for? And then when he said that, I'm kind of like, yeah, that's just sounds like I get what he's saying, but whatever. But, recently there was a time where that did kind of resonate with me. Like that's, a lot of people, I was talking to my sister about this too, is a lot of human nature is like to look for validation, which is not necessarily a bad thing all the time, right? Like a lot of life is validation, like to yourself sometimes too. Like I just wanted to validate the fact that I thought I could do it. Like, can I do it? And then you do it, and then now you validated yourself because now you did the thing, right? So it's not always bad. I think it's just a natural human nature thing. It's just obviously validation seeking can get out of hand and be too much, right? Especially if you're looking for validation from other people.
Yeah.
But when he said like, whose permission are you looking for? I mean, like that's, for example, for me, when I'm thinking about talking about life stuff, I don't think I'm like a life guru, coach, whatever guy. Like, I don't think I know that much. It's I just think I can help people with it. But at the same time, I struggle with that. It's like,
you don't think you've made a name for yourself enough to like,
well, not so much the name. It's just like, I'm 28. Like, what do I know that much about, if I was like, 80 years old and giving advice, you're like, okay, he's been through 80 years, but 28 doesn't seem like a super old age to give advice at, just generally speaking and whatever. So in that sense, you could say I am a little bit, that's what me talking to Gary on that Tea with Gary V was a little bit, is like, that's kind of what I was looking for, is that permission to kind of like, do you think I'm okay saying this stuff? And he was like, yeah, no, I think you're just trying to help. And then I'm like, yeah, I mean, that is the truth. I am trying to help. And so in that sense, I was kind of looking for permission of like people to be like, hey, no, it's okay for you to like whatever. Right. So I think that's sort of related to like, someone pushing you versus you pushing yourself a little bit. It's kind of like, it's almost nice. It reminds me of like, when you're doing some exercise, I'm thinking of doing circuits or something, like when I'm training. And there's something about everybody who's done like physical activity, like competitively or like in practice or training or whatever, is like when there's a coach or someone yelling at you,
Mm-hmm.
like for most people, I think there's something there that like sparks something in you,
Yeah.
you know, and I think sometimes people are like kind of looking for that, and that's what, you know, that's what we talk about school and
Yeah,
stuff like that. It's like
exactly.
someone like cracking the whip a little bit.
Having a
It's like
mentor in
it's like
general.
when you don't have a choice. It's like when he's like
Yeah.
you're dead tired, but he's like do 10 more. It's like it's
Mm-hmm.
not you saying it, it's they're saying it.
It's now like another expectation that motivates you in a way.
Yeah, kind of, right? Because he's just like, and it's like, or if the
And it has
especially
to
if
be
there's like a
one you
class,
respect. Yeah, exactly.
right? Because there's like everybody else is gonna have to do 10 more as well. So you're
And
like,
a class is like you're already assuming this person is being paid to do this, so they must know what they're doing. So there's that already like preconceived like.
yeah, sort of. I mean, I was thinking just like coaching and stuff.
Okay,
Right?
yeah. I
When
mean,
like
like,
10 more
yeah, you look at
push-ups or
like
something.
MMA fighters and they have coaches and like
Well, but
obviously
yeah, I mean that's why people get personal trainers too, right? Is like
exactly
to
because
push them and stuff like that.
they're not even
Um,
paying to learn these exercises because you can do that yourself. It's nice to be shown it, but like they're paying for that expectation on them,
yeah, yeah.
and the person
Someone,
choosing what
yeah.
they should do to build said thing they want.
Mhm.
Um,
But I mean, I think obviously if you can control how you're motivated to push yourself,
mhm.
then that's a good thing too. But I think obviously like this is such a vague quote that I think about like the motivations of, sorry, my cat is meowing at me.
What's up,
Um,
Poochie?
what? Um, but no, I think about like pushing yourself. If you can learn how you work, I
Yeah.
guess it shouldn't feel so much like pushing yourself all the time, I think.
Mhm.
Because and that's the only reason I say that again is because of the Andrew Huberman neuroscientist guy, is if you can manage like how you reward yourself internally, not like when you
Mhm.
get a fucking $5 bill or like a piece of candy, but like if you can tell yourself that you're doing well, you know, like it's the same thing in sports. Like if I land a punch, there's an internal circuit that's like good job, you got it, you
You did
got it,
it. Yeah. Yeah.
right? And same thing when you know when you and I are writing or you're drawing or something, you draw something and it looks really good, you're like, okay, good, there's a dopamine trip there, it
It's like I
hits
met
that
my
dopamine
own
button. Yeah,
expectation
yeah, that, or
in a
like it's
way,
just
or
working, it's just working,
yeah,
you're like, yeah, that
the
piece of
act of
drawing worked
working
really well.
is providing serotonin.
Yeah, and so like that
Yeah.
I think is a better driver of motivating yourself
Yes.
than
I
like
agree.
fucking right, like
Yeah. Get it
internally,
done.
like internally, yeah, like internally I don't know if it's amazing always to like crack the whip on yourself, but I
Yeah.
know
I
like, you
mean,
know,
it can
having
it can be
external guidance.
harmful. There is that
Yeah,
line.
anyway.
Um, I cross it a lot. Okay. We'll do like maybe like 2 or 3 more of these. Here we go. Make more moves and less announcements.
Yeah, I mean, do more, talk less.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty
But
simple.
I think it's also like people like to, and you know, I think I try to avoid this as much as possible, but
Mhm.
you know, like there are those people we know personally that like, I mean, I think you know, it's funny. I think it's backlash a lot as you get older, but they like to declare things,
Yep.
you know, like, hey, we're back, we're doing our videos again, or like, we're doing this now. This is what we're
Yeah.
doing. These are the things we're doing. Hey guys, because it's like, I understand why it's attractive to do that, because it's like you're almost guaranteeing. It's kind of like when there's, that's why there's announcements for like TV shows and stuff, right? It's like, hey, season 3 is coming out, so now I can rely on the fact that you said season 3 is coming out, so it's like a reliable, I understand, there's more understanding, there's more expectation there, and
Mhm.
it's like it's good to know that there's a thing there, like especially if it's a good thing.
Yeah.
But obviously like that's not what necessarily gets you to do anything. And I think I've even, there's some studies that say like, you know, once you say the thing, it actually
Mhm.
makes you less likely to do it,
Less
because for
motivated
some
to do it. Yeah.
people it's like
I
saying
know.
feels
Uh,
like doing it.
exactly. I know a lot of like screenwriters for Hollywood won't talk about it till they're finished it, but like I've seen this in myself, and I've seen this in a lot of people throughout my 20s, especially um, like specific people I can talk to about my idea and not feel necessarily that I've like lost that motivation. I do think you are more motivated to eventually show people if you don't tell anyone, but I've decided I like been able to like um
I think it's a good point though. That
It's
you
almost
just
like I've allowed a few people in my life to not do that for me, just because I can. They're open to the idea that I'm gonna make this, and they know I will, or when I say I want to, at least.
Mm.
So I don't end up feeling like maybe that dopamine rush of telling people, But I have also seen people throughout my life where they're like, "Yo, I'm gonna make 3 albums," and like they all like conceptual albums, and there's a whole story, and they're telling me the whole story, and I'm like, "Oh, that sounds really cool. Can't wait to hear it." But like, they just like got such a rush telling me their crazy conceptual idea, like, and they went into so much extra depth, and it's like, yeah, they never made those albums because
I mean, I think the reason why people do like talk and like make all these announcements is because there's dopamine and validation there, right?
yes, exactly.
Like telling
And
somebody we're doing this. It's
it's
everybody's like, oh
validation
wow, oh
without
my god, yay! So
yeah,
like
exactly. Like it's validation without work
yeah, yeah,
in a way. Like,
pretty much, yeah.
I mean, like it comes back to bite them, I guess, later because like you never did it.
Yeah, it does.
Not in
Yeah,
every
right.
circumstance,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I just mean like people don't understand the grind a lot for these things they want or these ideas they have, and like the best thing they can do is and have that initial idea and tell everyone, and like then it kind of just makes or breaks you whether you actually wanted to do that thing. Like you like the idea of it, like oh it'd be cool if I was a musician, but like actually putting in the work, then that kind of like separates.
Yeah, I use the example of like being a doctor for me personally, just as a fun example, is like I love the idea of being a doctor. You get to save. You think of all the good parts. You get to save
Yeah,
people. You work with people. You're like, I don't know. Everybody likes you because you're trying to. I like the idea of saving people. Who doesn't like the idea of saving people? And then, but you also have to like touch people that are sick and like do all these, things with people like very personally, like touching, I don't know, touching other people's skin all the time that are sick and stuff. And it just kind of could be gross sometimes. And they're like coughing and sick and stuff.
I mean,
it's like
the amount of gross things you have to deal with as a doctor, and then you have to keep it a secret, like
yeah, yeah, yeah.
like
but I just mean like you're saying about the idea that people like of being a thing. It's like, like people love, people walk in the gym all the time because they love the idea of being an MMA fighter. But it's like, do you know what that means? Do you know you have to like sacrifice almost the whole of the rest of your life? Like you can't fucking work. Exactly. You can't have a relationship really. You don't get to see your friends. You don't get to party. You don't get to do all these things because you should be focusing on training. And if you're not training and your fight's coming up, you should just be resting because what the fuck are you going to go drink? And like, there's so much you have to sacrifice. It's like your whole life and you might not even fucking win. You might just lose. And then you have an 0-1 record or an 0-2 record now. And you've sacrificed all your relationships, all of the money because you couldn't work during it, your health because you had to cut weight and all that stuff. I don't know. Like, I know the idea of it sounded fun, but like, do you want to do all those things? I don't know. Yeah. Right? Like,
once you find out what's involved, then it's kind of like, are you going to actually do it? I mean, like, ideas are easy.
Yes.
In my opinion, ideas are so easy. Doing it is hard. That's
why everybody wants to be a fucking architect, right? I'm just the idea guy.
Yeah. Or like Gary says, everyone wants to be an entrepreneur,
It's like, how many people have fucking app ideas?
Oh my god.
You'll have so many sick app ideas. I just need someone to make the fucking app because you have such a great idea. You just need to find the guy to make the app for you, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. They want to find that person, put that time in. Yeah. So I'm gonna say not motivating. Honestly, I almost didn't even remember the quote by the end of talking.
Well, you just like make less announcements,
make more moves, less announcements.
Talk less, do more, basically, which is fine. That works.
I mean, yeah. I okay. Does it motivate you?
Well, I think because I'm already in the process of doing it, so I'm already past that. But I think for some people will
like
have that realization.
You're going to be immune to.
Like, hopefully, those people that do talk more than they do, like they would at some day have that realization, and then they'll look back at themselves and be like, "Yeah, I guess I was more of a talker than I was a doer back then." And then
yeah, exactly. All right, we'll do 2 more. Stop shrinking to fit in places you've outgrown.
I can see that. Yeah, I mean, what I think about that immediately is
big fish, small pond.
No, I think about like where you've like, I think about the high school type thing. Like, you're living in high school still. And it's like, maybe like, especially if you've moved past that.
Yeah.
Like, and first of all, you should move past that as a specific example. You should move past high school. But you know,
Yeah,
if
that's
I've
dwelling
moved
on the
past,
past.
yeah, if I've moved past high school and then I still want to, like, my friends are still asking me to like do high school shit that I'm just not, it's not adding to my life, like go and drink and do all this shit. It's like I've outgrown that time now. That's not, I'm not in that time anymore. Like why, like
Mm-hmm.
there's been a time, there's been a couple times of that, like back when I used to hang out with them a couple times still, it's like you can feel it. You're like, I've outgrown this. Like I don't want to just go drink and do whatever. Like I think like for example, like I had that with weed too, was like for
Oh
me,
yeah.
right? Like there was a time like you went through it with me where I was like
Mm-hmm.
blazing, but then there was a big portion of time where I'm like, I feel like I've outgrown, like I just wasn't getting anything from it, but I was still doing it because that's what I used to do. I used to blaze a lot. And then
Yeah.
I just I think I outgrew it, and I had to make that realization of like, okay, why am I still doing this? I think I'm just gonna stop. Like I should just stop,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I think there's a lot of things that people have those, it takes a while or it takes or never sometimes, like you should realize those things is like, yeah, like you don't need to shrink. I mean, if you want to use those words, right, you shrink down to the places you've grown out of. Like I've grown out of like blazing now at that
Mm-hmm.
point, and maybe it'll come back in a different way or whatever, but for now the way I used to blaze, like it's just, it doesn't fit, right? So like i've
Yeah.
i've grown out of it, right?
Exactly. Yeah. No, I agree with this one. Like, you shouldn't kind of put yourself in a
I
place
think
that,
you should grow out of some of your friends.
yeah. Well, trust me,
Yeah,
COVID's doing it for me. No.
had to be done.
What?
Had to be done, man.
Yeah, COVID?
Who's
Yeah.
gonna, no, I mean like
Just
you
kidding.
have to grow out of your friends at some point.
I mean, yes. I mean, I'm just doing what I'm doing, and if people kind of fall out of my life along the way, then so be
Yeah.
it. I mean,
Yeah.
without addressing too many things. Um, yeah, no, I mean, I agree with this one. I don't know if it motivates me, but it's kind of a it.
I mean,
Yes,
motivation is kind of like a in the moment thing.
true. Like sometimes it's like it was the thing that day you needed to read. You
Yeah,
know, it's just like,
exactly.
oh well, it fits very contextually with what's going on in my life. It's very
Yeah,
subjective at the moment.
yeah,
All right, the biggest risk is not taking any. This will be the last one.
yeah. I mean, I agree with that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
to a certain extent, obviously, but
Yeah.
based on most of the things that I talk about in like
Mm-hmm.
first world, like be happy, find happiness, find yourself type of
Yeah.
like talk that I have, it's like, yeah, that is true,
In
right?
this
Like,
world, finding happiness is a risk.
yeah, I
In some
mean,
ways, like
that's how you're kind of wired to think of it. If I'm
I
like,
think
obviously
that's a
we're
capitalistic
being very very vague here,
totally. Yeah.
um but in the
I
sense
mean,
of like,
this thing is vague, so
yeah, of course, yeah, but you know, in the sense of like, if you know, with your parents, they're like, oh, you shouldn't do this because it's too risky, you should
Mhm.
do something that's more conservative.
Yeah, yeah. I'm sure a lot
um
of people have dealt with that in their
yeah,
life.
and I think, but you know, the the framing of the mindset of like riskiness of like not doing something is because,
Mhm.
you know, at the end of it you're going to regret all of it because you never even took a chance at maybe even, and you never got to live the life that you wanted to live.
And
And
regret's just like the worst feeling.
yeah, I mean but I feel like regret is like, it's an undervalued word, or there's a better word to use, because it's
Mhm.
like, it's more of like you wasted your life,
Yeah, and
right?
then
Like
like that's the
waste,
worst feeling you could have.
like you could have tried, you could have at least tried to do that thing, and
Yeah.
then at least you would have known.
Yeah, like if you
um
try and fail, at least you have that answer, you
but
know,
you
like
didn't even do it, so you have zero chance and you wasted your whole life, and then now you never knew, and then you just die,
mhm.
and then you never got to do anything you wanted to do, and then you just lived it because you were told it's too scary and it's too risky. And
Yeah.
then, you know, so I understand. It's kind of like, you know, Tim Ferriss talks about that a lot, right? Is instead of doing well, I forgot what it's called, but like fear planning or whatever the fuck he calls fear, whatever, is basically
Okay.
you try to map out what will happen if you,
Like
first you map
risk
out like what will happen
management.
if you take the risk, worst case you take the risk and it doesn't work out, what will happen, and then how are you
Yeah.
going to recover. And then but the last step is like, okay, what will happen if you do nothing, like what will happen if you don't take that risk, if you just, you know, 5-10 years from now you haven't made any changes at all, you didn't take that jump, you didn't take any risk, like where is your life going? And that's when you're supposed to realize like, oh, that's where that's more risky because it's more
Mm-hmm.
scary to be in the same spot 10 years later. Therefore, I should take a jump because relatively speaking, I don't want to end up 10 years down that road. So I'm going to take this jump and go this route. Even if it doesn't
Yeah.
work out, I planned the recovery to get back to at least, suboptimal or whatever. So taking the risk is worth it. Right.
Yeah. Uh, and so sorry, do you see value in like kind of breaking down risk management like that? Like, I mean, I obviously it's valuable to a degree. Like,
I think so. I mean, it's meant to, I think, like quell your
anxieties.
I want to say quell your qualms, but yeah, like your anxieties
Yeah.
about taking that risk, right? Is like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the worst that can happen? It's like, okay, let's imagine the worst thing happens and then you recover from it. Therefore, if you know the recovery route, then you feel a little bit like, okay, at least there's a path. Because I think what most people get to, especially in the first world with our parents and stuff, is they live in very narrow confines of like their life, of like where certain little things, if they're outside that boundary of comfort, it's like,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? Like, oh my God, what are we gonna do? Like, oh my God,
Yeah.
I've never had to, like, I never had no laundry. Like, I use that laundry example all the time. Like not I don't think this even ever happened, but let's just bring it up as an example. Like, if I don't do my laundry, then my
Yeah.
mom's like, but Curt, if you don't do your laundry, you're not gonna have clean clothes. And then what are you gonna do? You're just gonna not wear clothes, or like, what are you gonna wear, the dirty clothes? Like, how could you, like, they're living in the, like, we always do the laundry and you always have
Yeah.
to,
Like it
but it's like,
only goes this way.
yeah,
Like,
but like, if I don't do my laundry, I'll either wear the dirty clothes or I'll wash and wait for, like, why is this a big deal? And it's kind of reminds me of also when I went to, Vietnam with my other buddy, and we kind of like planned, backpack, kind of planned our way. We don't know where we're going to stay the next day
mm-hmm.
or whatever. And you just kind of plan a thing at the, literally that day you plan where you're going to stay through. Luckily we had phones, right? You just book a hotel that night
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or something, right? And then you just find a place, and then, but that's pushing the comfort zone of like, I don't know where I'm gonna whatever, but my parents could never do that because that's so
Totally.
scary of
And
like,
had you not taken that risk, you might not have had some of the experiences you had too.
no, of course not, right?
Yeah.
Like, they wouldn't even, as a comparison, they wouldn't even take that trip.
They probably need it planned down to a T and like
Yeah,
to their specifications, obviously. Like,
exactly.
and they're older parents, they're not going to go on a backpacking trip, but like
Yeah,
in general, like,
but they're like, we got to make
carefully.
decisions impulsively that led to
Yeah,
like crazy fun things that happened,
totally.
wouldn't have happened if we planned it out to a T, right? It's kind of like, oh,
Hmm.
you want to just go back there? Like, let's just go back there. And then we just
I
plan a
mean,
book a trip back there.
that happened with us in Japan too. Like,
Yeah.
not to that degree necessarily, but like
Mhm.
there were times like, for instance, we went to that like German pub in
Yeah.
Roppongi Hills, and like the smallest little pub, but we met like the most interesting people in a way. Like,
Yeah. That was crazy.
they were like working at a consulate in Japan, and like they're from different countries. I was like, oh, this is crazy right now. And this is like a Japanese guy serving us German food
Yeah.
and beers, and it's like, this is super odd combination.
It's
But and
crazy.
then he partnered with an actual German guy that was
Mhm.
like his best friend, and I just learned all this history and sitting there for like 2 hours, you know.
Yeah. That was dope.
Um,
That was a dope time.
but yeah, I mean, just mean like that's just one of those instances where it's like obviously not a risk, but it wasn't like planned to a T, and it's just like, let's go do this thing because it's just cool.
Yeah.
Like we just came across it.
Mhm.
Um, in the more fun traveling sense, this is it's applicable.
Yeah.
God, I honestly like. I think back to Japan and stuff. Like, I'm really missing, like not having the ability to go there.
Yeah.
Like, even though I might not have gone right now, obviously I'm at school. I'm not going to Japan, but
Yeah.
not having that ability to go is making me like, I fucking wish I could travel to Japan right now. Like,
I feel like that, but I also think, like, I guess what keeps me, sane about the times right now
mhm,
is that, like, I know it's not forever. And I said this
totally.
at the very beginning too, like, of all this shutdown stuff. I'm
Mhm.
like, okay, guys, like, because everybody was tripping, like, at the beginning, everybody was tripping out with like a month or less in,
Yeah,
and I'm like,
it's
guys,
like, yo, buy all the toilet paper,
yeah, that shit. I'm like,
buy all
guys,
the
just
sanitizer.
whoa, 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 like this isn't gonna be forever. I don't think. Like, if this
Yeah,
was like like, first of all, if it was like a black plague, like everybody's just dropping dead left and right,
yeah,
and then like, that's scary. Then I'm like, oh fuck, okay, this is not gonna be okay for a very long time, and the risk is so high of just dying. I can just go outside and die because I don't know, it's in the air that lingers everywhere. Like, that's scary. But this didn't seem like that, right? Like, it seemed like eventually things would slowly get, even if, and I said this too, I was like, even if it was like a year and whatever, like I know it'd be like a rough year for a lot of people. And like, I'm not talking about financial, I'm talking about like people like us that would just, we're okay financially, we have jobs that are somewhat stable, and we can just have to live a little bit more humbly and whatever, like we're lucky in that sense. Because I'm thinking about more people that are in similar situations to us. I'm not speaking to like the people are having a much harder time, because
speak to what you know,
but
right?
you know, like if all you really have to do is live humbly and stay inside, I mean, like just stop fucking crying, man. Like it's gonna be
we're just so
fine.
impatient.
You'll just look back and be like, hey, remember that 2020 year sucked?
Exactly.
And you'll be like, yeah, that sucked, right?
Whereas
there's people that are really like, I don't know, this is such a big thing for me. This is my big event. Is like, dude, there's people that are really fucking suffering. Like their businesses shut down. They can't put food on the table. Like there's some real shit. Exactly. But you're crying that like what's like I think
stay home and play video games.
Yeah, well, like no, someone is crying. It's like, well, like I miss going to the office because I miss my routine of like wake, and you're like I know, like I am empathetic to the things that have like you know, at least you used to go to that coffee shop during your lunch break, and like you don't get to, like, I'm trying to make up stuff, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like I get it. I miss the coffee shop too, but like it's gonna be like a year and things will go back to normal, and it's gonna be okay. You know, like why?
It's not forever.
Just suck it up for a little bit.
People are impatient.
Fine. It's like, and it's also like I use this, and this is my vent that I've said so many fucking times over this time, is like, if you're in positions like us, right? It's like this is the time to explore so many things, and like people like, and human nature, right, is you're so tied to your thing that you do, your one or two things that you do. And I see this again at the gym. This is like the 2000th time I bring this up, but you know, you see people at the gym, they call us when we're closed and they're like, can we still, like, I'll just secretly work out with, like, I'll pay you an extra $200 and let me just work out in the corner. I'll clean my stuff. I'm like, bro, I'm not gonna let you in the, can you just read?
Yeah. Like,
why is this, why is your life so contingent on this one thing? And I'm like, I even talked to one guy, because he was like, oh, I'm not coping well. I'm like, I know you came to the gym every day, but like low key, like, were you really making any gains? And like, before I even finished, he was like, no, you're right. I wasn't really making any gains or whatever. It's just, I guess, part of his social routine and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Whatever. But
he doesn't have that
me, I'm
anymore.
like, well, like if this like shatters your life so easily, maybe you should rethink your life a little bit, because you're so vulnerable that, like, just because you can't go to the gym every day for an hour, like there's so many things, like, and I say this all the time, is like, there's people that would like fucking kill you for their ability, for your life. Just like, there's people that I know that are like, they're, you know, they're suffering from a disease or something like that. They aren't healthy. They don't have their health anymore. Yeah. Right. And you're crying about not being able to go. You got to wear a mask or some shit or something. It's like, bro, this person would kill for your health and fucking like live the fuck out of your life. Just even being able to live at home and go for a walk every day. Like they just can, like, they just want that. Like if they could just have that, they would be happy, but they don't have their health. They fucking have, they're in and out of the hospital, whatever it is. Yeah. There's so many people that don't have what you have, yet you're still crying because I don't get to see my friends.
When you're in our position, like Zoom. Yeah. When you're in our position, you either have to see it as an opportunity and that this is short term, it can't be forever.
Well, you see me,
or right? You let it eat you alive.
All the things that I like, I'm, you know, you could say I'm lucky. Right. There's one way to look at it, is like, I'm lucky that I have so many interests. I have Gundams and anime and video games that I can focus more on now. Like it's actually load off. It's a load off that I don't feel obligated to work out now.
Totally.
Right. So that I can focus on those things. So you can say I'm lucky that I have so many interests, but I also think knowing yourself deeply and not being afraid of taking those risks or whatever the fuck, like, is actually more accurate than saying I'm lucky. It's that these people, probably like, all these people that think like, oh, I'm not like that type of person. I wouldn't read a book. I'm not a book guy or something. That's like, it's like, well,
drawing.
First of all, have you tried all the things? Like maybe it's not, maybe you did try reading 10 different books and it just didn't work out. Okay. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt that you tried reading 10 books and it didn't work out. Okay. I'm sure there's a million other things that you can do in your house that you have not tried.
And then you're just not willing to try.
Exactly. Right.
No, dude, you see that with drawing, and I know you've probably like heard of this kind of stuff too, where it's like, oh, I'm just not one of those people that like, I wish I was good at drawing. You know, I wish I was one of those people that was good at this thing. It's like, you can be. It's just these things take work. Like,
I mean, that's what I was gonna say too. Is I went for a walk today. I was thinking about that, like video editing, and I'm like, you know, I made that post about, oh, it's easy to make content and stuff like that. I'm like, I was thinking like, oh, maybe it is also like, I am lucky that I'm like talented at like editing and stuff. I'm like, wait. No, it's not that I'm lucky. I just
no, it's not luck at all.
I liked it enough from a very young age that I spent like quite a bit of time editing.
Yeah, I remember, put time into doing it.
Yeah, like I remember. Hey, buddy, what's going on?
I was kind of laughing. I saw Poochie trying to go on the tower for a second, and then he's just like, nope.
Just wants attention. Yeah. Yeah, no, like I remember at a very young age being very into editing videos. Like I remember grade 10 marketing. Shout out to fucking Amin and or Mr. Bach.
That's out grade 10 marketing. Woo.
Yeah, and we had to make a commercial, and I had to edit a commercial on Windows. What was it?
Like it was a Movie Maker.
Movie Maker, yeah, Movie Maker. And it was just so exciting to me. Like I actually, I didn't even recognize that I liked it back then so much.
Yeah.
But hindsight, I'm like, I fucking love that shit. Like I really liked editing videos and stuff. And like, I wanted to make AMVs, anime music videos and stuff like that. And then slowly I realized like, like I like editing videos. Like that's a thing that I like. And so like, it wasn't talent. It's like, what's the thing that you actually just like the most, that you just naturally just are inclined to doing, which is a segue into like suggesting that everybody should read at least the Spark Notes, because that's what I did, or watch the YouTube videos for Mastery by Robert Greene.
Mastery. I'm writing it down. Here we go.
Mastery, because that's what he talks about. And
Robert Greene.
A lot of successful-ish people talk about that as like going back to like when you were very, very young, what were you naturally inclined to, right? Like, so another segue to like the fiction writing. I'm looking at fiction writing. I'm studying fiction writing a little bit more. Is I remember like this. I remember this story. Like I remember this being a kid in grade 2. They chose so everybody in the school had to write an Easter story.
Yeah.
And they chose my story to be on the front of either the class or the grade or something. So my cover of my story, whatever we drew for the cover, or I don't know, maybe I was the only one that got to draw a cover for our grade or something like that. It was something special. It was like, that's the one.
I have a story like that, pretty similar too.
Oh yeah. And then I wrote this long ass story of like the Easter bunny like picked me up and we did on this whole adventure. And then obviously you can't, like, there's only so many words and pages we could have in the book because everybody in the school is writing a story.
Yeah.
My dad looks at it and he's like, Curt, you can't have like 10 15 pages of this story.
You showed up with a novel.
Yeah, he's like, you only have this many words and pages, right? And then he's like, okay, we just have to like shrink it down. So we had to like cut my whole long ass story into like pages, and I was like, oh. But that's like a sign of like, you know, I did like writing stories and stuff like that. That's something that I can call on, of like something I was naturally inclined to doing and liking. And so you could say maybe I was like talented or something, but there's clearly at a young age there was an inclination to like want to do that type of stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
Similar story. I'll make mine brief. At grade 3, they had a guy who's an animator for like Reboot and Max Steel come in, and the teacher ahead of time made us like draw a character. It's like, you have to draw a villain. So we all drew a villain, and then the guy's like, I have 5 posters from the show, and I'm gonna give it to like the 5 best pictures, and one of mine got chosen. I was like, oh yeah, I got this poster. Like, yeah.
Well, it says my internet connection is unstable, but it should be fine.
Yeah, I can never tell if it's me or you, but there's been like maybe 2 instances where it's kind of a little jittery. But
yeah, I mean that book I think is really important to, like, even if I'm not like the master him as a writer. But just he's done a lot of research on like the people that have mastered their craft, and Albert Einstein to Steve Jobs, whatever it is. Exactly. And it is that like what, like a lot of them was because they were given the freedom at some point in their life to explore those things that they were naturally inclined to doing. So like Da Vinci, this is the apparent story. I don't know. He did the research. I don't know how true it is, but he apparently had he was like, I guess he was like a bastard, sort of, like he was wealthy, but
he wasn't royalty.
Yeah, like he wasn't the main kid.
He's like fucking Jon Snow.
He was like the side kid. Yeah, he's like Jon Snow. He's like the side kid, but he had money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
But that allowed him to like do whatever he wanted basically. And so he would like paint stuff. And then apparently painting portraits was more common, but he would do like rocks and like scenery and shit like that. So that was
Mhm.
special apparently. I don't know. That I don't know why, I don't know. That sounds weird to me, but sure, whatever. And then
And
basically he through
they
that,
discovered rocks.
yeah, I don't know. He was more like free and allowed to like explore that stuff as a child, and then that led him to, you know, they put him in whatever school of painting, whatever the fuck. But just because he had the freedom of being able to follow those things, whereas, you know, like most people, I mean, not all the time, but like most people, their parents or society or school or whatever tells you you shouldn't or can't or do these things. Like you should be more this, you should do those things, and you get steered out of those
These like
things. Like,
frameworks that they set you.
yeah, like you'll never
Yeah.
be a musician. You should try to be like a, I don't know, a doctor or somewhere, something more
Lawyer.
stable, or like do a business. You should do a business class or something, because that you can always use a business class or something like that, right? And so you get
Yeah.
steered in all these different directions where genetically you're naturally inclined to like and be good at certain things, right?
Agreed.
So like why would you not try to like do those things instead of force yourself to like do these other things that you weren't even naturally inclined to and might not have any like talents or anything there.
I feel tall. I feel bad for tall people because they're always like, "You should be a basketball player."
Yeah.
Some of them might be like, "I don't fucking care about basketball."
Yeah, I mean, like he has like the book is full of those stories of like there was some pilot guy that he actually naturally wasn't the best pilot. Like he was good in all the studies and he passed the test and then but like as soon as he stepped in the cockpit, he like freaked out kind of. But he had this passion of like, I really want to be a pilot, and like he, you know, he wasn't very, because especially, you know, if you freak
That's
out when
like,
you're in the cockpit, that's not very
yeah,
good, right?
it's like the story of Monsters University.
Oh yeah, I guess. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
Sorry.
and then basically he used all his resources to like do all he could up to that point, and he tried to like, I don't know what he did, but like he got to the point where he could at least handle being in the cockpit, and then he worked his way up. Like he just through that sheer like will
Yeah.
got himself to that. But it's because he genuinely just really wanted to be a pilot. And he brought up another one, a basketball player that like obviously probably like the basketball player says himself, like, I wasn't the tallest, I wasn't the fastest, I wasn't the strongest, I couldn't shoot the farthest, like all the things,
Yeah.
the
Was it
stats
Steve
weren't,
Nash?
I don't
No,
think
I'm just kidding.
else, but like he used all his, like, you know, in sports, like for example, like, you know, using your brain, like if he can study the team that he's about to play, he can tell that this guy has to tell before he does this, he's going to do that. If I cut him off on the left side, he's not good with his right side or something like that, whatever it is, right? Like
Yeah.
he used all his resources he possibly could to get
Yeah.
to where he wanted to get to. And it's not necessarily being naturally inclined. Obviously that helps if you are naturally tall or something like that. But it's that passion that you're naturally genetically inclined to liking or doing that like can carry you that way. Because and everybody says this, you know, you see that quote with Steve Jobs saying this, where it's like, would anybody, like the amount of work that it takes to do the thing and become a master, be really good or whatever, is ludicrous. So like the only way to get there is if you love it, if you actually really want it. Like the pilot, he wanted to be he just wanted, he's, you know, he couldn't handle being in the cockpit, but he wanted to be a pilot so bad that he just somehow willed his way to the point where he could handle it, and he became like the top whatever, you know, those stories.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Same thing with
He's
that
the top
basketball
pilot.
player. He became some crazy basketball player, even though he didn't
It's
have
funny.
stats and stuff. But it's because he genetically was disposed to love and have that passion.
I worked at an open gym like basketball program, and like there was a lot of tall guys who were really good at basketball and stuff. But like there's this one guy, and he was like 5'5" maybe, Filipino guy, and he was so tricky, and like he was so good. Like he like schooled all these guys, and he's like you know, like 4 inches shorter than them. You know, it's like wow. Or
It's like your
or
forte.
more. Yeah, like
that's another good word for it.
yeah, forte. Like yeah, and there's just like so many guys like in these programs I wouldn't expect to be good at basketball, but they were like so good at like faking people out and tricking them that they could like get by them. They just found solutions to like obviously.
Yeah, I mean, like I think about Achilles as a fighter too, right? Is like when he fights taller or longer fighters with more reach or bigger ones, like there's times where I remember one of the taller guys was saying like, wow, you almost make it feel like the fact that you're shorter and smaller is an advantage because it makes me feel like my arms take longer to retract because they're so long and yours are shorter. So like you feel like you're faster than me and you can move more in and out than I can faster, whereas I feel like I'm too slow with my long arms. But that's all
Yeah,
like,
there's a way to like
yeah, like that's
flip
that's
the script there. Yeah.
yeah, like, but it's because he like had the mentality of like I don't know, he just focused on his thing, and that's
It's like, okay, here's a problem. I need a solution. Let's do it.
yeah,
In a
yeah.
way,
I mean, I think about like, you know, I've been studying a little bit of like stoicism, and one of the
I bet
key,
you have.
yeah, one of the key like things, like tenets or principles or whatever of stoicism is focusing on what you can control and not what you can't control. And I think
Mhm.
that's a very important thing to think about. And like the analogy I always use obviously is sports, right? Whereas like you can't control that your goalie's injured or your left wing
Mhm.
is whatever is not there. You got someone got a red card or some shit. Like you can't control those things, but you can control what you do. Like if your left defender is like injured but he's still playing, you could go help him play defense as well as play your position. That's not easy. Like I can't play
Yeah.
two positions very easily,
Now that's
but
tough.
you can do it.
But
You're in control of that. You can also play heavier defense. You can just be tighter on your defense to make up for him. And then, you know, because that's what you see the best players do. And that's when, you know, I think about League of Legends, this 5-player game where they're always blaming. It's 5 versus 5. So League of Legends is 5 versus 5. And the game has the chat, and everybody's always like getting mad at each other. Like, it's this guy's fault. No, it's
yeah,
your fault. And no. And then it just becomes a shitstorm of you blaming people. Whereas the best players don't even pay attention to who's, you know, let's say one of the players is 0 and 5, right? They died 5 times. They have no kills. They're going to be useless later. They have no impact on the game. They're like a negative impact because they're feeding the other team. The other team's getting stronger because of them, right? But you can't control that. All you can control,
exactly.
you know what's happening in the game. You know he's useless. Don't rely on him, first of all, right? And
Yeah,
then you
this
can
guy had
control,
the
you know that
audacity
that
to get out
character
of the
that
game.
you
Sorry.
know that their team is stronger because of him. You know that that's a fact. So now you can play with that knowledge. It's like, okay, one thing, for example, is that team might get cocky because that happens a lot in this
Exactly.
game. Is like they're
I
like,
mean, look
okay,
at
we're
hockey and
stronger.
power plays, like when they lose
Yeah,
a
stuff like that,
teammate
right?
for
Is
a
you
bit,
take
like
advantage of those things, right? But
it
more
doesn't have to be the
commonly,
reason they get more goals. Like,
yeah, the more common thing to think about, or like the more common thing that people do, is they just start blaming, like, yeah, we're losing because this guy
yeah,
sucks.
exactly.
So it's his fault. And then they still rely on him, like, well, you should have been there if no. So it's your fault we lost. And which is like, okay, sure, you can do that. You're still gonna lose though.
You
If you
don't need to
rely
make more problems. You need
but
to
you should
make
just,
some
if you want to
solutions.
actually win, yeah, like if you want to actually win, don't rely on him because you know he's not strong enough to be relied on now. You have to take control of that. But that's only if you
Exactly.
actually want to win,
Yeah,
right? You wouldn't
you
be,
have to be motivated personally to like want to fix that issue.
yeah, I mean,
Like for
that's,
instance,
but
the
that's,
Achilles thing, like you're saying, like if he wasn't believing in himself or thinking like, okay, this is clearly this guy's got an advantage in these areas, where does he have a disadvantage? Or like, how can I make this his advantages work towards helping me? Like you're saying, like
yeah, I mean, it would happen with us and with GMB as well, right? It's like you guys were more busy than I was. So but I would sometimes be like, oh, it's not fair that I do this and whatever. And you guys say this and whatever. Like, I feel like it's not fair what's happening.
yeah,
But also I realize again, like there's a certain amount of work that needs to get done. So if I want it, I came to that realization, I want it more. So I will do the work to get there more. I don't really give a fuck who's fair and who's doing what and who's doing more or
exactly, yeah.
less work. I just want to get there. I don't really care about this other shit, right? And it's funny, actually made a clip about that stoicism, the control and stuff is and Food Wars, there's a scene like that too, where like one of the characters is going up against a super high level chef, right? Like one of you know whatever, and then she's like freaking out because she's like, oh, I'm not good enough, like I'm not as crazy as him. He's has a restaurant in France and he's one of the elite 10 chefs and whatever. And then the main character like slaps her hands and she's like, hey, don't even think about him, just think about making your dish, think about making just the best dish you can make. Think about your cooking's great, just make your cooking, don't even think about his shit. And that's what stoicism kind of is, right? It's like you can't
Yeah.
control that he's a world renowned chef, that he has a restaurant in France and he's part of the elite 10 and whatever. You can't control that.
The elite 10
your
chefs,
cooking.
they control all the food within the world. Sorry, go on.
But yeah, anyway, that was just, I thought that was a very useful thing.
No, it definitely is. Like, yeah, it's just like you're in that moment and you have no other option but to accept the circumstances, and you either got to do the best you can to try to fix it and close
I think
that
that's also
gap,
like
or
why, you know, people like Gary will say like you're in control. Like he will say that like
yeah,
you're in control. So if you believe
yeah.
that, then you'll act in a way that you can do everything you
It's
possibly
funny.
can
I
about
wrote
the
that
things.
down
Yeah,
on my
you're in
whiteboard
control.
one night when I was so stressed. What?
That you're in control.
Yeah, I wrote that down because it was like just the act of writing it, like
Mhm.
made me be like, you know what, fuck, I am in control. Like, why? Like, the stress doesn't bother me. You know, like
Yeah.
for instance, today, like a work related thing that we both know about. Like I could have let that bother me, but I'm also like, you know what? Well, I'll just do better. Like, you know, it
Yeah.
doesn't make or break my
I mean,
life.
now it's out of like that. That was it's not
Yeah,
in your control
I can't
anymore.
fix it. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it's a learning lesson. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, what happened in the past is not in your
Mhm.
control. That's another thing too, right? Like it's
Yeah.
in sports, but it's a good analogy for life. Is like people dwell so much on like the
Oh,
things
so
that
many.
just happened,
And
right?
I've done in the
Like
past.
it's like when you know when I'm boxing or something, if you get hit in the face, a lot of people are kind of like they get hit in the front, fuck, like they look
Yeah.
at them so they're like, oh, fuck, I shouldn't have got hit there. But
Mhm.
you watch pro boxing, and a lot of times, if you know they're both very competitive, he gets hit, but he just hits back at the same time because
Mhm.
he's not even worried about like, oh, I got hit. Oh shit, fuck. Okay, I gotta keep my hand up. He's not like he's not taking that second to look at himself negatively and be like, oh, Curt, come on, keep your hands up or whatever. You know, he's
Yeah.
not even thinking about that. He's like, no, I fuck that. Like he's just focused so much on winning that it didn't even phase him. And that's what, you know, what
Yeah.
Gary says about like don't respect your losses. Like obviously learn from them and get their more data points and learn
Mhm.
about all this stuff, whatever, but don't respect them. Right. Like you don't have to be like, oh, I lost. Like, yeah, you know, I suck when this happens and that's a weakness of mine and blah, blah, blah. Like that doesn't really get you anywhere
You're
usually.
creating this like narrative for yourself to like feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Mhm. Well,
That was
I feel pseudo
motivated.
motivated. I think there was more. I think there was a lot of like I agree with the statements, but you know they're not like in the moment motivating me. But there's a few. I think it's that kind of
I don't
spurred
think, you
some
know what I
good
don't think
talks.
quotes
Actually,
are meant to, I mean, I guess they
they're
are
meant to
for
hit you in the moment.
people. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not gonna. It's just like a horoscope, you know. It's always gonna be kind of applicable to your life at the time a little bit, but then there's
Mhm.
some that are like, whoa, this is
And
crazy,
then
like
that's why like I
accurate.
always
But
like I try to write like for the people that do read the stuff. It's like I put the thing there sometimes the quote,
mm,
but like ideally you read all the things so that
yeah,
like you
exactly.
understand. Like I can maybe even if you're on the fence, I can kind of convince
Also,
you.
exactly, convince them and like understand where you're coming from
Yeah, like
within
what am I
that
what do I
simple
need?
statement.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Anyways, this has been a pretty good podcast. We should do this again next week or something.
yeah.
But before I leave, my buddy Pecky Post Drag released his album. It's called Kins, and it's on Spotify. I have the actual tape. He gave me a tape. So,
Yay, congrats, Becky. I
yeah,
love Becky.
yeah, that's a motivated guy. So yeah, check out his music if you're into that kind of like ambient kind of music.
Lo-fi.
Cool. Yeah, kind of like lo-fi ambient.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. It's a good talk.
Yeah.
And you let us know in the comments. You're not going to, but let us know were you motivated by some of these quotes?
Okay.
You have an argument for why we disagreed with some of them?
And
Um,
we're gonna end just as awkward as we always do.
yeah. Oh yeah, totally. It's funny because like with two of us, it's hard to be like, okay, well, we're done here for today. I'm done interviewing this guy. Like, thanks for being here. You know, it's just like we're just friends talking. So it's like, yeah, I'll talk to you later. But like,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
Okay.
yeah, no, good stuff. I mean, you
What are
can
you
just
gonna
stop
do
recording.
now?
We can keep talking, but
What are you gonna do now?
I don't know, draw or maybe play COD with you.
I haven't played COD in so long. Holy fuck.
Yeah. Well, I played for the first time last night in a while. It was a nice. It's nice to just like kind of turn my brain off and do an activity that wasn't like some stressful new project I have to learn
Yeah.
overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah,
How far are you in writing Synapse's like plot?
I have like I would say I have like 8 chapters,
Oh
like
wow.
planned out, but actually written I have like maybe 2. like dialogue and everything.
Because I just want to give you like a breakdown of some of the
Totally.
stuff I learned as fast as I can, so that
I mean, you don't have to rush it. I
no,
just
no,
thought
no, it's not to rush it. It's just like you should watch the lectures, is what I'm trying to say.
I should watch the lectures.
But because like this is directly
my pencil's out,
applicable.
dude.
Yeah, but it's because
ready,
it's
right.
directly applicable, right? But I try to give you a rundown.
Apply it to me.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I gave you a little bit of a rundown in WhatsApp.
Like the lotion that I so desperately need. Yeah, put the lotion back. Okay.
I started watching Mandalorian, by the way, so I'll talk about that in a second.
Oh yeah.
But I was gonna use.
We're getting into nerd talks now. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, I was gonna use the Mandalorian as examples to illustrate the stuff that I've learned so far.
Yeah, no, totally. I love the show so far, and the new season's great. So
yeah,
I won't get into details.
So one concept that like theme that you're gonna have to like use in everything, if you can use it almost everywhere, then this will make you a great writer, is the promises, progress, and payoff. So and this works with like fight scenes. It works for like small scenes like fight scenes, to like when you open a scene, to the beginning, to like anything, is versus even like the big plot of like what's the big overarching plot and the big character arc and all that stuff.
So those are promises? Are those promises?
So you start with promises, obviously. So like I'll bring up the scene in Mandalorian where at just the first scene, okay, he walks into the bar. And already because of Star Wars' context, they're like some genres have promises in and of themselves.
Within themselves, they have
like because it's Star Wars, you reckon he's a very. I mean, actually, it doesn't even have to be Star Wars, but like the main character is like he looks distinct, right? Like he has the fucking helmet and all that shit. You know, he's the main guy. The camera's
like Boba Fett,
right? And then things are happening, but right away, there's a promise that we're gonna get to learn more about this character. Like it's how sick is he, right? Like. There's a promise there. And then there's going to be, then that's why when you watch the stuff, the progress is when like, okay, there's an altercation in the bar, obviously, right? Something's happening. They're trying to catch this guy and the guy's like, oh, I don't want to. And then all that stuff is the reason why that's entertaining is because I feel like we're going to, at some point, this altercation, this thing that's happening is going to lead to me progress, getting to know our main character more.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And then the payoff is when he fucking fights everybody and like, puts them off. It's like that. I learned something like he's sick, right? And
what I love about this character is like they do that. Like you know he's gonna be highly skilled. Like he's got the cool armor, all that stuff. There's a built-in like Star Wars kind of lore that you kind of know a bit of. Like, but like and you'll see it throughout the shows. Like there's times he comes up short, and I think those are the really important moments where it's like he's badass and he's well trained, but he's not like invincible. You know?
Yeah.
Sorry, go on with the rest of your
but you can apply that in like promises, progress, payoff, and like everything. Like so, for example, the reason why I liked I mean, okay, I was gonna use Edge of Tomorrow, but that works too. Whatever. There's so many, most characters like any Skywalker type character, right? Like there's a lot of stories, like a lot of anime start with like a Naruto / Luke Skywalker / Avatar, like Aang and stuff. Is that there's a promise that they're going to grow in like abilities, right? They start off very not great at their thing. Like they have some talent, but the progress is going to be them getting better at their thing, right? So that's why watching a montage of them training is entertaining, because it's like, okay, they're getting better. And then when you see them pull it off in the actual thing, that's a bit of the payoff and also part of the progress of like, okay, look, he's getting better. Like next time he's going to keep training, he's going to keep getting better. So there's a promise even in the character arc. Same thing with like you have to use that concept of promising and then using all the stuff that what you should decide is like, what do you want your progress to be? Like, what do you want them to be actually doing? Right. Like if they're traveling, you have to make the promise that at the end the reason why they're traveling is because they're trying to get to somewhere that's you want the reader to care about. Right. So the promise can be, I don't know, like, my father, I'm gonna find my father or some shit. So they go on their journey, or it's like even if it's a loose one that kind of just a lot of anime does this. Like Inuyasha is like, we're gonna find all the Shikon jewels.
Hunter does this like
I know father thing. Hunter, but it was father, but like Inuyasha, we're gonna find all the jewels or
sacred jewels.
We're gonna find
the Dragon Balls.
So it gives you like the promise of like that's gonna happen, and it gives you a reason why we're moving forward. Like why is Luffy just traveling across the sea? It's like, well, he wants to be the pirate king. That's why he's trying to conquer all. Like, there's a reason why. So watching it feels satisfying because there's progress towards that goal.
Agreed. Yeah.
But that again, that works in everything. Like even fight scenes of like, you know, the easiest, most on paper way is like, okay, the goal that we need to like get to is like he needs to take out 10 guards. Okay, so every time a guard goes down, we feel the progress.
Yeah.
Right. Of like, okay, 5 left. Okay, 3 left. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's a progress feeling. So that's the first and most important concept, I think, to like wrap your head around. Is like whenever you're doing
The
something,
3 Ps.
because otherwise, if you don't have that setup, it's boring kind of, because like there's been lots of, so whenever you're bored, like
you get like a Mary Sue story then.
yeah, I don't know, but I guess, but like there's times where you feel like not satisfied when you're watching something, you're bored. It's because one of those things is misaligned, which can be subjective, obviously. But like, for example, like, you know, when they're spending too much time on like the love story or something between these two characters, you're like, I really wanted them to just beat the bad guy. I really don't give a shit about these two characters getting.
It's funny. That was me with like the second Lord of the Rings when I was younger. I love the Lord of the Rings series,
but like, that might have been because they didn't set the promise of that was going to be part of the story. So for example, here's another example where it doesn't work for some people is that, you know, Cloverfield Lane, the one where they're underground.
Cloverfield Lane. Yeah.
Is like, remember at the end, there's all like, his spoiler, there's all the Cloverfield stuff, the alien ship and all that shit.
It turns out there is aliens. Yeah.
So for some people that didn't work because they don't know Cloverfield, right? So the promise didn't set it up for them. They're like,
so they're like, so it's a psychological thriller that just turned into sci-fi. What
exactly, right? The promise wasn't good for them. But for us that know Cloverfield, we're prepared for the promise of like Cloverfield weird sometimes.
The concept of it also plays with the idea of like, you knowing Cloverfield.
That's what I'm saying, right?
It's like, oh, it's in the name, so something.
Like we know Cloverfield gets weird, so that we were prepared for that promise to eventually probably get paid off because something's weird. Cloverfield's weird; it'll do weird shit. So like when there's an alien ship, you're like, oh, there's that's why it's Cloverfield. I see.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah. So that's one, and then when you're thinking about your characters, so this is another bullet point or new concept here, is
flawed.
Every character, well, we talked about this on WhatsApp. I threw this at you on WhatsApp, but every character kind of plays up and down on these 3 scales, which is likability, proactivity, and competence, right? So most of the time, your standard shonen or like main character, Luke Skywalker type character, is pretty likable. He's kind of proactive, like that one you can play with at the beginning usually, but usually he's kind of like, he shows some hidden competence, like he's some kind of talented, but most of the story is him getting more proactive and more competent. So because first Luke is not proactive, like they're like, come be a Jedi, he's like, nah, and then they kill his parents, and then he's like, okay, now I'm fully proactive. And that's why, like, I think the quote that helps me,
it was his uncle, okay,
whatever, they're like, you know, suddenly it was personal. And I wrote that down because that's what brings the empathy to you and between you and the character, right? It's like something happens and then suddenly it was personal. Now as a reader, you're like, yeah, no fucking, yeah, you killed my uncle. Like I'm down. Like, yeah, he should fucking, now you're motivated. The empathy, right? There's you're rooting for him because you want him to like it, whatever. So suddenly it was personal. And so that proactivity is going to go up now with that character. But a lot of times, so basically I think about those 3 scales, right? And so for example, like the old master usually is like low on proactivity, but really high in competence and really high in likability. Yeah. Right. Like Kenobi's kind of like that, right? Is like, come on, help us. And he's a little bit, you know, like you can see there's a lot of those, like in, you know, in One Piece, there's those characters too, like the mentor. It's like, why don't you just fight? He's like, no, my fighting days are over. I am too old for this or some shit. Yeah. Right. But their competence is really high.
Star Wars constantly has that. It's got Yoda. It's got the new Star Wars. It's got Luke being like that.
So I think, yeah, but I just thought like thinking of those 3 scales is like super interesting to like play with those 3 scales.
It's funny because when you did tell me that, I did look at all my characters and I was able to find those things. I was like, hey, this one is very competent. This one's not competent. You know, this
because it's like what it's part of that was what makes it interesting to watch the character. Right. Is like when these scales are being played with, it's like you thought he was this competent, but then he wasn't that competent or something like that. And now he has to go back to the drawing board and train again and whatever. And then the other thing I mentioned this to you again before is a lot of the conflict and stuff is going to revolve around either flaws
Yeah.
limitations or handicaps.
Mhm.
So flaws are usually like they're not strong enough or something. Like it's something that they can control, that they sort of should have maybe like had figured out before this or something. Like, like he doesn't trust others, like he doesn't trust people. That's a flaw,
Yeah.
right?
That's
Like
yeah, exactly.
he should be able to trust others. In the
And
story,
it's always
again,
that story of him slowly opening up,
right?
becoming warmer
So
to
that's a
people.
flaw,
Yeah.
right? A limitation is when you, like we talked about, it's like if he was born without an arm
Yeah.
or something like
that
that,
is
right? That's something that
limited.
he's gonna have to overcome regardless. Like he can't, he's gonna, can you not use your arm? Like, no, he has to overcome not having an arm,
Yeah.
right? So that's a limitation. And then I think,
Or was that
no,
the
that's a
handicap?
handicap. No, it's a
Yeah, I was gonna
handicap. No,
say.
you're right. That's a handicap.
When you were saying that, I was like the whole time I was like,
No,
what is a handicap then? Because I
yeah,
remember
yeah.
that being
No, that's a handicap. No, you're right.
okay. So
But a limitation is something that you can't overcome. We're just gonna work
yeah.
with it, right? Limitation just straight up like the example he brought up in class was we have to protect Aunt May as Spider-Man. That's not something
Yeah.
we have to change. We don't want to change that we have to take care of it. We're not going to be like, well, let's overcome that and we'll forget about Aunt May, right? Like it's a
And
limitation you have to work
limitations.
with.
Yeah, exactly. Peace out, Aunt May.
Yeah.
No, you're gonna be like the uncle. I forget his name.
Ben.
There we go. Wow, how did I forget that? It seems like the limitations kind of concept is also like things out of their control.
Yeah,
I mean, like
handicaps can
a
be
handicap's also out of their control, but that's like an inherent thing they've always kind of had or
Yeah.
have to deal with throughout their life now.
Yeah. And so like that's, I think that like think about that with your characters, like that's where
Yeah.
a lot of conflict is going to revolve around is those things.
Yeah.
Trying to think of all the other things. And then I mean
See,
yeah, go on.
These are things like I feel like like we were even talking about this before. It's like I feel like I inherently already do this just through dissecting media and
course,
like
yeah. I mean,
from
I
all
did.
the writing, but like having it contextualized is actually it's just like these motivational quotes, it's like these are things I know or I should know, I guess. But having it like put in a package that is like easy to digest, it's
concrete
like,
and like in my face of like
and
this is a thing.
Exactly. And it makes me reevaluate like what I'm
because that's what
doing,
I was thinking too. Is like, when I was writing a little bit of like I wrote a little bit of a story too, is like while you're writing, you just have to make sure that every scene or whatever there's like why, like it's kind of like imagine the reader or whatever is constantly asking himself or herself, why am I reading this? Why am I reading this? Why am I reading this? Like every line, like if you're writing a fiction book, like every line I'm gonna read that one sentence like, why am I reading this? Why? And I need like a reassurance of like, okay, it's because he's training to get stronger because he wants to beat the guy, because I care that he beats the guy because they killed his uncle. So I'm gonna read this because I want to see him overcome
that.
You promised me he was gonna get stronger to beat the bad guy, but we're focused on the side character who has a love interest in some other character that I really don't give a shit about. And you're like, well, okay, I don't give a shit, right? Why am I reading this? Right. So like, it made me think of like, okay, constantly when you're doing stuff, you have to give the reader something that makes them like, yeah, this is why I want to read this. Like, this is interesting to me because I promised it. And that's why like, I'm not that surprised, but like, how much they go back and forth between the end and the beginning and the middle of like changing, like, okay, and now they realize this is the type of progress I want. Like, this is what I want the majority of my book to be them doing, which means, okay, now I have to go back and change my promises at the beginning and be like, okay, you have to give some sort of tell that matches with the progress that
foreshadow it.
Yeah, because that's why those things are more satisfying. Because like you told them at the beginning, this is what's probably going to happen. Yeah, and that's why that goes back to like the Game of Thrones thing too, right? It's like it's not always interesting if you're just like, this once there was a guy and then he died, and you're like, there was no promise there. That didn't feel like progress towards anything. That just felt like something happened for no reason at all.
Right? Well, the good parts of Game of Thrones, it was kind of like, it seemed like to throw you off for the sake, like not the sake of it, for like something meaningful, because it'll make sense later, or like it adds to this person's story. But I mean, like later it was just like, we're just gonna throw this.
People were sold on that promise that because everybody said two things when those things happened. They're like, it's to show you the world is bigger than
right.
this story and and then
Mhm.
the second thing was like to throw you off, to have a twist or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Actually, one thing about twist that he said too that was interesting is like what you want to do with twists is
Mhm.
either, you know, you're hinting the promise, like the car, right? You want to give this,
Yeah.
like that's his analogy. You're trying to give your son a car. You're hinting the car, the promise. They're gonna get a car for Christmas. You're gonna get this toy car. You're gonna get this toy
Yeah.
car. And then when you, if you want to do it, like obviously the best thing is to just give them the toy car, right? That's right. But
Mhm.
if you want to do a twist, either you
Oh
say
yeah.
toy car, but you're like, but also planes are pretty cool. But you're getting a toy car. You're getting a planes are cool, but
Yeah.
you're getting a toy car, and then you give them a plane, or you give them both. Like you give them the car
Yeah. First they
and the
open it, it's a
plane.
plane, and they're like, "Oh, okay." And
Yeah, but you have to
it's like,
hint the
"Ah,
plane
but here's
enough.
the car."
Yeah, yeah, or yeah, you could do that too,
Yeah.
right? But it's just not to like not even have any reason for why they wouldn't want this. They
Yeah.
you have to kind of promise it subtly. So like his example was like in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf is like you don't realize this, like it, like I guess because I forgot about it too, but in Twin Towers they're like, wait, two towers.
Two
I always
towers.
mix the two up.
Two
'Cause-
towers. Twin towers are 9/11.
yeah, I know, right? My bad.
That's okay.
Um, he's like, look for me on the
On
whatever day.
the east,
Yeah,
on the
look to
fifth
the east
day.
on the day of
Yeah.
the 5 days or whatever, some shit on the
Yeah.
fifth day,
On the
whatever.
fifth day.
And then, but you forget that because they enwrap you so much in the battle.
Hmm.
But when he
And it's
shows
like
up,
that moment where you think it's all over, and then it's
yeah,
like,
but when
"Oh,
he shows
Gandalf."
up, they remind you of the
Hmm.
promise they made at the beginning,
Yeah.
right? Like they have the voiceover of him saying it again
Yeah.
just to remind you, like, look to me on the whatever day. And then he
Dawn of
shows up and you're like, wow, they did it.
and
And
it's
it's
epic,
weird
and it's
'cause-
also with an army you forgot existed.
yeah, yeah.
Um,
Like all of that. Like somehow
yeah,
they wrap you, but it's
I totally
satisfying.
forgot about this.
He's saying in theory that the instructor is saying in theory it's
Yeah,
satisfying because of that promise that they made. It's because like, you know, every reader like Sim loves that too. It's like, oh, you connected the thing, it's all you said and then
yeah.
it happened. Ah! Like, he was saying, like versus Return of the King, when he got the other one, it just for some reason he said he didn't feel like they got that promise of that he was going to go get a thing. It kind of just felt like all of that happened, but there was no promise at the beginning. It was just kind of like, yeah, he went to get an army, and then like,
Like
he went off
another army.
there,
Yeah,
and then he just
you
like,
mean the army of the dead?
yeah, yeah,
Oh, okay, yeah,
like he just showed up at the right time, and you're like, yeah, I mean that's kind of satisfying, but like it didn't feel as satisfying because they didn't have a, you know, look to me on the whatever day, like they didn't have
yeah.
one of those.
And also like, this might be going off topic a bit, but like in Lord of the Rings, like there's that payoff moment where it's like this has all been building up to this moment, and like everything seems like it's all for naught in a way. And
Mhm.
then you know, when Aragorn, like the music drops, everything drops, and he's like, "For Frodo," and then they all just fucking charge. It's like, oh my god,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
payoff, because it's like I just spent like 13 hours building up to these moments. You know, like
yeah,
if you're watching extended, I guess. But same with the end game. You know, it's like when Captain America was like Avengers, and then
Mhm.
same thing. Music drops, and it's like assemble.
Actually, that's the other thing that I could talk about too. That's really useful is that first of all, like it's actually really interesting how like I don't know, they're like story plot archetypes
Mhm.
slash like structure. They're actually used really formulaically almost in Hollywood movies, which is obviously not that surprising, but
Yeah.
it's like
Sorry, I dropped something.
Infinity
Go on.
War is actually a heist movie. Like the framework of that story plot archetype, the archetype
Yeah, yeah.
of Infinity War is a heist.
That's an interesting way of putting it.
No, but
Actually,
that's what they like actually said. Like the writers said that.
oh, it's like a time heist. That's a end game.
It's like no. Infinity War is a heist because they're trying to take the jewels away, protect the
Yeah,
jewels from
but it's funny because like in Endgame they go, I want to do a time heist
yeah, something like that. Sure, yeah.
because they have to do the same thing. They have to get Infinity Stone, so they're both similarly like heist.
Maybe yeah, maybe
archetypes.
game maybe too. But and
yeah,
or
sorry,
like Winter, was it Winter Soldier? No, what's the other one? Was it Winter Soldier? Might have been
there's
Winter Soldier.
Civil War and Winter Soldier.
I forgot. The one where it's just Cap and I don't think it's Winter Soldier. It's like Cap and Widow. First Avenger? No, that's the first
No,
one.
Black Widow.
You know the one where
later.
GSP's in it? Like Captain America fights GSP on the ship.
Oh, that's Civil War.
No, it's
Oh
not.
no 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 no! Oh, you're thinking of an Avengers movie. I think
No,
I'm thinking
no,
of like.
it's Cap. No, it's Cap. It's just
Oh, okay. That might have
Cap
been
and Widow, really. And
people at
then
home are probably like being like, "It's fucking this." No, I
yeah,
think it's Winter Soldier.
I think it's
I
Winter
think.
Soldier.
Yeah, I
But
think
like that's a
that's the
spy thing.
more. Yes, I was gonna say that's the more espionage spy
Yeah.
one.
So like that's one
Um,
that's like to start the conversation. But he's like, how can you use so there's all these things in like setting, for example, that you can use to like enhance your story.
mhm,
And your and like he's like basically he had this exercise where we mixed setting elements and plot archetypes, right? So
mhm,
he's like, how can we make a mystery kind of like thing, like story? How can
mhm.
we enhance it with fashion? Because that's a thing that you could use in setting, right? That's fashion is setting, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like,
So
how would
like
we?
Blade Runner, kind
So
of like
like you could,
a
yeah,
certain
like so he
aesthetic
was saying
is.
like, well, let's say there's a story where the Sherlock Holmes, like the detective, can like tell a lot of a person by the way they're dressed,
Oh, okay.
like
I
so
see what you mean.
that would enhance the story by using the
How that's
fashion to
applicable.
enhance a mystery story.
Hmm.
How could we use military, which is setting, to
Yeah.
enhance like a romance story? And you could be
I
like, okay,
mean,
well, there's a class divide there, right? Where like, you
yeah,
know, the plebeians can't, you know, marry the like military royal people or something. Like
yeah,
you
yeah.
can use elements from your setting to enhance your plot story archetype. And it's just interesting to look at all the different tools you have to like
Mhm.
play these, you know, to make it interesting. You know, I
No,
don't know.
no, no. I totally agree. Like how you can apply like yeah, setting and environment to like influence that.
But
What?
he was saying like, yeah, like how setting generally is actually like the lowest of the, like setting, plot, characters, and
Mhm.
like they're all like generally close to being equally, you know, whatever. But in general, if you have an amazing character and decent plot and a
Mhm.
shit setting, the story will still be okay. Story gets
Yeah.
really good, but generally, and I feel like anime sometimes is an exception to some of these things, but if you have terrible characters and an amazing setting and like a mediocre plot, like the story could kind of be bad
Yeah.
because you just have a great setting, but like nobody gives a shit about the characters and the plot's not interesting. So fuck whatever. Right. So it's usually characters and plot are more important than setting,
Mm.
just by a hair. But you know, like you and I love fantasy stuff. So like the story,
Mm.
like setting, the setting stuff is way more fun
Yeah.
sometimes because we get so enwrapped in like, yeah, and then there's gonna be these animals that only have fucking
Yeah. And they
shark
talk.
teeth and yeah, whatever. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Like
That's
Star
why
Wars.
I like I looked at all the genres. Like I love fantasy, but I also love sci-fi, and
Yeah,
I
yeah.
I also like I like futuristic movies that aren't too far off from our own time period.
Yeah. Like Blade Runner.
So I kind of combined all those when I was trying to make my comic setting. Um, but one thing I did want to talk about, uh, what was it? I'm losing this idea. Oh no! Oh wow! I can't
You
believe I
don't
just
remember?
yeah, just
Is
like
it
went out
gone?
of my brain.
It's gone now.
Oh, we were talking about setting. Frig, I yeah, I don't know. What
Plot, setting, character, payoff.
this is lame
Um,
material for a podcast. But what was it? I'm driving myself nuts now.
I feel like if we resume talking about
Yeah,
it, you'll
whatever.
remember.
It'll come back.
Um,
Yeah, these are all interesting methods to apply. Like it's
because
cool to look.
you know, like obviously anybody who's writing a thing will do a lot of these things naturally, but I think it's
Mm,
really useful to be
look
conscious
through.
of them, like to
Yeah,
remind yourself
have that
of like,
lens to
oh
look
yeah,
through.
this is we're doing a heist. That way,
Yeah.
like I think it's more of like, you know, when you're lost. One, it's if
Mm,
when you're lost, when you're like, okay, what do I write next? Should I do this first or that first or whatever? It's like you
hmm.
remind yourself like, okay, yeah, this is the sort of plot structure, or like, oh yeah, this is the character arc, or like, you know,
Yeah.
and then he also talks about how like a lot of storytelling is, you know, you're showing the reader this stuff, but you're really like building this on the side for that to
Hmm.
come in. You know, he talks about it being like a magician, you know, like you show them the sleight of hand, all this stuff here,
Yeah.
but really there's something going on here. And
Yeah.
then it's like, and that's kind of what the Gandalf thing was, right? It's like,
Oh yeah.
I should, you know, it's there, but he's showing you all the war, this big, you know, was it Minas Tirith? I forgot like the whole
I don't know.
stronghold. It might not have been Minas Tirith. It might have been the other one.
No, they're at Helm's
Strongholds,
Deep.
right? But whatever, they're like this
Yeah.
whole battle scene and all this stuff, and Legolas and Gimli have their competitive
Yeah,
thing,
they're
all this
fighting and
stuff
then
going
getting
on.
the most.
But he's distracting you from like, yeah, Gandalf's actually like working, and then he
Mhm.
comes in and saves the day, and then you're like, oh shit, yeah, he did set that up the whole time.
Yeah.
um and then the fuck, what was the other thing I was
I
gonna say?
remember what I wanted to
Okay, yeah,
say,
go
but
go ahead.
okay. Um, I like when a world can play by its rules.
Yeah, actually, you know what, that's what I was
Doesn't
about
break
to
them.
say.
Yeah, because like for instance, I always bring up like Evangelion, because like for instance, they have these giant robots that can fight, and you watch Gundam and they're in space and they're just fighting, and it's cool. But when you're with Evangelion, it's like, yeah, if you get off of the cord that charges the robot, you only have 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And like they play with that, and then they play with their expectation with that too. Like that
Yeah, so
when
he
when
talked
they get
about like,
past the 5 minutes and he's still like going
yeah,
berserk mode fighting, it's like, oh whoa, okay, like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
there was a payoff in breaking that rule. Like,
Yeah, I mean, but see that wasn't, they hinted at that too, because they
they
hinted
did, yeah,
how,
they
anyway.
did, yeah.
But again, like, I think that's actually, I think you under like, we all might underestimate a little bit of like why there are those hints early on, is because there's a promise there, so they feel satisfying,
Yeah,
because you notice those things if you're paying
exactly.
attentively, or once you watch it, you can go back and be like, oh no, they did hint that that's what that was back then or whatever. But anyway,
Mhm.
he also talks about like, and everybody would
Appreciate
understand this, is soft world build, or like soft magic systems, which is
it. Mhm.
basically anything soft world building, soft whatever, versus hard, which is like, I think about One Piece versus Death Note is my example when it comes to anime.
Yeah,
One
there's
Piece is
specific
soft.
rules, yeah, to
Yeah,
do
like One
stuff.
Piece is, there's some hard stuff where it's like, people that eat devil fruits can't swim, like they just sink. That's a hard rule. That
Yeah.
if they broke that rule, they'd have to explain a fucking lot and really make some exceptions there. But that's a hard rule. But
Mhm.
everything else in One Piece is so like, this guy's made of fucking, dude. The last episode, there's this guy. He's made of biscuits, and he uses like cracker biscuit dust to make whatever face shape he wants, because it's just the crumbs of the cracker. And you're like, only in One Piece would this fly. Like no other. Like
That
he's
sounds ridiculous when
made
put
of
into words.
cracker dust. Like what the
Yeah,
fuck are you talking about? So
totally.
but One Piece, you're like, it's fucking One Piece. This person is made out
A
of
lot of those
fucking
shonens are like
garbage.
that. Like my example is Dragon Ball Z. That's just one that like the concept of it is constantly breaking the expectation.
Yeah, I mean,
In a
also
way,
like
like
the promise that they make in Dragon Ball Z is, this is what's gonna happen. Story's gonna
like
come that's really
it's
strong,
happened
and
so
then
many times
somehow
that
it's
yeah,
overcome it, and that's
exactly.
why people watch it, because it's the same
Mhm.
promise and the same progress and the same payoff, and
Yeah,
it's
every time.
that's why. But versus like Death Note is extremely hard magic system, or whatever you want to
Yeah,
call it.
it's like you have to fly by those rules
Like,
or
because
else like
they legitimately, they just tell you literally in your face. There has to be a lot of explaining of like,
yeah.
if he
I
doesn't
mean,
die in 60 minutes the way that you wrote him to die, then he'll just die of a heart attack if he
exactly.
can't get to his thing. But if he can get to the thing, and but if it's too far away, like they're walking you through the rules. So it's like it's a very hard magic system where it's like you have to follow the rules, and it's only satisfying if you do.
Yeah.
But there's also like benefits. There's benefits to both, right? Like there's Hayao Miyazaki, where it's like this the sense of wonder of like, why is this lamppost have fucking legs, and why is it hopping around? I don't know. It's Hayao Miyazaki's world. I'm sure there's an explanation, but
It
like,
doesn't matter
it
though.
doesn't
Like
really, yeah, exactly. It
yeah,
doesn't matter. But anime always walks that line of like trying to be a hard magic system, but also want to play with wonder, where they try to explain things
totally.
later. They turn it
Yeah.
into a hard magic system later by explaining things. That's where like J.K. Rowling's gotten in trouble a bunch of times, where she has to backtrack on Twitter and say some shit like, well, actually, magicians something something something, that explains the bullshit that she put in the, like, why couldn't she
Yeah.
just use the time machine before? Well, actually she couldn't,
Yeah.
because she plays
One
with
time you just
sometimes, right? And it's good to play
yeah.
with both. Like, and he says, for example, Lord of the Rings does it well in one sense with Gandalf, versus like he's using the ring as a hard magic system of like, when you put the ring on, you go invisible. That's just a rule that happens.
And
That
then
like,
Sauron knows where you are.
yeah, and if that didn't happen, you'd be like, what an
It's like, oh, we're
inconsistency.
gonna use it now.
Yeah, it only
Really
happens
did.
sometimes. Like, why does it? I don't understand. Whereas Gandalf is a soft magic system, where it's like, if you're like, okay, what can
Yeah.
Gandalf do? I mean, I
I'm
don't know,
trying to
like
think
stuff,
back.
like lots
Yeah,
of things that I don't know. I'm
exactly. Like
sure
I'm not even
tons of
aware of
things.
like how much magic does Gandalf really even do? He like shoots some light out.
Yeah, but he
Like, but
represents like, and that's where he's saying, even literally and figuratively, Like the hobbits are small in this whole world. Like Gandalf is to represent the whole world in respect to the small, tiny hobbits.
Yeah.
Because Gandalf, has all this experience of the world, and he's a great wizard that has all these magical, mystical powers that we can't even comprehend. Versus these tiny little hobbits that don't really have any much knowledge, and they're small and they have relatively low impact, and they don't, all this stuff. So Gandalf represents that like you can use the soft world building in that sense of like being this mysterious, you don't have to explain every single thing. Like when he's like, when he fights the Balrog, you don't know how did Gandalf beat the Balrog? I don't know.
Exactly. I don't need it explained either.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's to represent that part of it, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's always interesting to like think about where you want to apply soft and hard. But I
agree.
Personally, I feel like applying soft world building is like harder for me than applying hard world building.
I like being kind of boxed in within. That's why I was like bringing up Evangelion, because like they had specific rules, or like Death Note, same thing, specific rules you had to follow. And I think it makes for a lot of times more interesting storytelling, because it's like you're kind of also, as a viewer or reader or whatever, you're breaking it down, being like, oh, he can't actually do this. He's like screwed in this situation because of this rule. Like, this is crazy. How is he going to get out of it?
Weakness. Yeah, exactly. That's
get cornered in writing.
The weakness of it, or like, I'm not sure about the weakness, but is that I forgot what I was going to say, but I think I was going to say like you're now kind of stuck to follow. Oh no, that's I was going to say. No, it's not necessarily that. Never mind. What I was going to say was it's subject to how much the reader understands the system. Because if your reader doesn't understand the system, but it's based on these hard rules and things are happening, and he still doesn't understand why, then the reader's going to be like, I don't understand what's happening. Like,
it's like in Game of Thrones, like you have to pay attention a lot, or you did.
Yeah,
and like I remember like
magic, but
but like I remember having a chart like, oh, Jon Snow, like whatever, spoilers. If you haven't watched it by now, who cares? It's Jon Snow dies, and it's like, oh, he's dead, but the Red Woman is in the north, like, and she's revived people in the past. Why would they show that? Like they start breaking it down. Like, it has to happen. She has to be the one that revives it. And then of course that's how it happens. But like so many people were unsure, but like they left the clues there. And it's like the people, like if I look at it geographically, they're together. They're in this area.
Another one that like he had a short story teacher come in, like a writer come in to do like a one quick seminar, but she brought up like she calls, I don't know why they're called this, the mice quotients. So there's four different types of story quotients that you can put into your story. So one is a milieu, which is it's like Alice in Wonderland. You get put in a place, and the goal, that's the problem, and the goal, the finish line, the motivation is to get out. So the story starts with you getting in this place that you don't want to be in, or whatever you're trying to get out, and then it ends when you get out, right? And so your whole job as a writer is to make that as difficult as possible, right? Is they try, and then throughout the story, like this is a theme, is try fail cycles. So that's another thing you should write down too, is try fail. Is the whole story should be, what should the character do in the most logical way to get the thing it wants, he or she wants. And then it's either, this is the other thing you should write down with the try fail cycles, is either yes but, or no and. So you're put in this world, you're trying to get out, you do the most logical thing to get out.
Does it work? They have a flying carpet.
Yeah, so I mean, they use the example. He used the Star Wars example when they're trying to escape the stormtroopers in the ship. Right, that's the goal. So if they escape, they win, right? But they go down the garbage chute, right? Does it work? Yes, but there's a monster there.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay, I see.
They try to kill the monster. Does it work? Yes, but the walls are closing now, right? Or like, whatever, something else, like whatever thing is, like it could be no and. It could be no, it didn't work, and this is also happening. There's more Star Troopers or something.
Yeah.
Right? So
I see.
So that's the story. But when you're wrapping up, you reverse that. When you're getting to the end, you go yes and, or like no but. Like it didn't work, but someone came to save them, or it worked and they got whatever.
Interesting.
Right. Anyway, so that's one, milieu. And then I forgot what they're all called, but one is like inquiry. So you want to know the answer to this thing. That's the goal.
Mm-hmm.
That part, that quotient, that storyline finishes when you get the answer. So like, who killed this man, right? Who did it? Who did the thing? And then again, your whole thing is try fail cycle, and your job is to make it as hard as possible to find the answer to who killed this man. Like, oh, you think like House, when they're trying to find the disease, who like what's causing this person dying, they try to find how it's like, oh, they think they found it.
Lupus. It must be lupus.
Yeah, it must be lupus, but then it's not lupus. And then, finally by the end, they try and then it works. But the whole time it's try, fail, try, fail, try, fail, try, fail.
Yeah.
Right. And then, and then the other two. So one is, I forgot what you call it, but it's like it's like a personal conflict. So that's like your coming of age story. So that's, he wants to change or self-identify himself, self-esteem, realize who he really is, become a
into
different
the
person,
wild,
change himself, whatever. Like JD Salinger, right?
Catch the Rye.
And so the story is all about him trying to become that person, and then obviously failing a lot of times. Like, he tries, but then it kind of doesn't work out. So he goes
sometimes
back.
they come out at the end and it's like, do they even want that? Are they even that thing?
Sometimes they don't have that payoff, right? Always. But yeah, I mean, they're trying, they try to change and then it doesn't work out. So they revert back, but then they don't like it there. And then the whole story is them, flip-flopping and trying. So that's an internal thing. And then the other one the last one is an external conflict, which is like a meteor is going to hit the earth. So we have to try to stop the meteor. And again, try fail cycle, right? We try this, doesn't work. Try this, doesn't work. And then, so those are like the 4 quotients of like things that could potentially happen in your story. And you can add as many as you want, but she made like an equation that was really interesting, which is like something like, basically it was like every time you add a quotient, it's like multiplied by whatever. That's because that's going to be bigger. The more quotients you add, the more story you're going to have to write, right, to resolve those things.
Yeah.
And then I think she was like, you add half of the story. So you multiply, like, every quotient you add, you times it by 1.5. Does that make sense? Because you're gonna, that's half of the whole story. You're adding that. She's like, it's an approximation, obviously, but it's good to like think about. So every time you add one of those quotients, a milieu or an internal and external, whatever, you're gonna add half of your story. You times it by 1.5.
Oh, okay.
It's gonna be that much longer, right? Half of your story longer. So if you add a quotient, it'll be 0.5. You add another quotient, it'll be 2, right? Because it'll be 2.5s.
Oh,
you know what I'm saying?
I see what you mean.
Right. And then she's like, you also add, was it roughly like 250 words? Because it's anywhere from like, I think it was like, I don't know, 150 to 300 or 500 words for every character or setting you introduce. Because it takes a page, it takes like 250 words at least, roughly, to introduce a character or establish a new area, location.
Yeah.
Like the castle versus the desert versus whatever, the boat or something.
Totally, yeah.
So now she's like, obviously it varies, but like just the approximate, if you're thinking of like how long your story should be, every time you add a quotient to resolve that, it's going to add a 0.5, like half of your, an extra half of the story.
Yeah.
And adding a character or whatever. So then, I just thought that was just a fun.
That was an interesting mathematical way of breaking it down.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, we should probably wrap up here because I do have to urinate.
Okay. All right.
I am enjoying this talk, and honestly, these like different writing aspects are kind of helpful for me to kind of.
It gives you something, I think.
Just like look at what I'm already doing through that kind of lens.
Because you can still like, I think it's like, it helps like, any story that you and I want to write. It helps me like put it in the right mold or framework or structure. It helps me like structure it properly so that it feels more entertaining and rewarding for the reader, rather than me just wanting to like, there's magic stuff and there's this guy that does.
It's so cool. Everything's cool. Everybody's happy. This one guy's always powerful.
But you realize like the reader has to feel like entertained or whatever it is. He needs to feel satisfaction by reading it. And how would you do that? And this I was fascinated by, because it's like, no, that makes sense. Like I would be interested. That's why I was like, I'm watching Mandalorian or whatever, all these things. I'm like, this is why I'm interested or not. It's like, I wasn't interested because they didn't sell me on that promise enough or whatever, or like the progress didn't match the thing, or it really did. And that's why I am interested. This is why people like it, is, that's why I got excited and started making those anime clips.
Man, I'm glad you're watching Mandalorian. It's a really fun show. And they really play with that like overarching story, but like every episode kind of is like almost feels like its own thing sometimes. It's like, oh, this is just like a one-off little adventure. And After coming
Yeah.
from like shows like Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad, like everything is connected. Everything you have to pay attention.
You have
along
to
the
know.
way.
Yeah, you can't
But
just.
this one's like, oh, he's just fighting a dragon in the desert this episode. That's cool. And there might be
I
one
actually
little.
like looked at or I read the quick wiki page,
Oh yeah.
like
No,
Mandalorian. Like,
this latest season is so well done. I mean, the first season is great, but this latest one is like.
well, did you know what
they're
like
up in-
Mandalorians were before this show?
I kind of did a bit from Clone Wars and stuff, but not so much. Like I didn't know like there's like almost like a cult side of it and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like I didn't know all of it, but
Yeah.
that was cool. Yeah. Anyways, this was good. I'm down to do more of these. Hopefully, COVID's over soon and we can do them in person again. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. If you've gone this far.
All right, guys.
Yeah. If anything, I enjoyed it. All right.
You too.
Yeah.
All right, bro.
Good talks. Yeah. Nice talking with you. I guess you can stop recording.
Okay. All right. Peace.